The meeting to order. This is the regular council meeting for Monday, November 28th. I'd like to first, we acknowledge with respect that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen speaking people. And we are honored to have this opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. Approval of the agenda, near-term, long-term, and regular council meeting agenda. Are there any errors or omissions on this? I'll call the question. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimous. Item 3, mayor's message. I have a simple message here today. I didn't have one at first this morning, but I did forget something here. And it's a special shout out to the staff. To Mr. Earl, the IT staff, and the corporate services staff, and that is we were evaluated by the West Shore out of the 6 municipalities, which include Sooke, and we were rated number 1. And how they did this, they looked at a scoring matrix, they looked at the prompt availability, if it's easy to find, the audio, the visual. And we ranked number 1 of the 6 West Shore municipalities. So great stuff, people. That's outstanding. Except it only shows the top of my head. I'm short. Adoption and receipt of the minutes, regular council meeting minutes. Can I get a recommendation that the minutes of the regular council meeting held November 14th, 2022 be adopted as presented? A mover, Councillor Jordison, and Councillor Ward, seconder. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Meeting minutes are adopted and received. Now it's time for public participation. And I understand we have 2 from the audience and 2 call-ins. Is that correct? Okay, so I'll let what I'll do is alternate. I'll have one come from the public that's here, and then we'll go to the call-ins, and then we'll go back to the people that are here, and then the call-in. Okay, so the first person, if you want to step up, you just state your name, your address.
And I have a page for distribution, which I will pass over to the staff. My name is Karen Woodland. I live at 524 Elevation Point Terrace in Colwood. And my person I worked on this report with is Cindy Moyer, who is also a Colwood citizen. Cindy is participating via live stream tonight. So good evening. And thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Congratulations to those of you elected and re-elected to represent the citizens of Colwood in the stewarding of a healthy and sustainable community, and on your unanimous approval of the city's draft climate action plan. And congratulations also on your accessibility to the public. Colwood's climate action plan is focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which are causing global heating and climate chaos. 80% of greenhouse gas emissions, or GHGs, come from the burning of fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas. And these emissions must dramatically decline if we are to avoid catastrophic consequences. The Colwood Action Plan recommends changes in the city's Energy Step Code and aims at reducing carbon use while increasing efficiency. Many municipalities are also pushing the province to ban natural gas from the BC Building Code. In addition to climate concerns, there is growing public health concern associated with the use of gas appliances and their impacts on respiratory health. Fortis BC, a corporation focused on marketing carbon products for the profit of their investors, will be here tonight to promote their products. As you listen, we ask you to remember that natural gas is not natural.
30-second warning.
It is a fossil gas. And we ask you to let Fortis and the development community know that the future is fossil-free. And the best way for us to begin a just transition to low carbon future is simply to stop adding more carbon utilities to the city's new construction. Eliminating natural gas from new and eventually all buildings is a multi-solve climate solution that will save homeowners money, create a healthier community, and help combat global warming. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karen. And now we'll take one from.
I'll invite Jane Devonshire to turn on her camera and her microphone and address council.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to speak to item 6.1, the delegation from Fortis, BC. I live at 242 Glenelly Drive in Virol, but I'm speaking on behalf of SICAN, the South Island Climate Action Network, which has reps from across the 13 municipalities, including the Citizens Environmental Network in Colwood. Renewable natural gas is biomethane. No matter what spin is put on it, it is still methane. It still leaks into our atmosphere. It is still harmful to our health and to our climate. And it cannot be considered a low carbon energy when it is 75% carbon. Our ask, therefore, of Mayor and Council is to decline support for Fortis's submission to the BCUC, along with all of Fortis's other requests. Some of the many high-profile interveners at the BCUC hearings opposing Fortis include highly revered and respected scientists, Ian Finn from I See the Sky, the cities of Vancouver, North Vancouver, Burnaby, Richmond, Surrey, Victoria, District of Saanich, the BC Sustainable Energy Association, the Sierra Club, and the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. When over 700,000 doctors, nurses, and other public health practitioners are prescribing and getting methane out of our homes and buildings, why would anyone not listen? I have submitted SICAN's BCUC letter to Mayor and Council, along with a myriad of other resources. As Antonio Guterres said at COP27, we are on a highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator. Our provincial and federal governments and fossil fuel corporations may have their foot on the accelerator, but we hold great hope in our municipal councils that they will apply the brakes. As municipalities, you have the power to make the bold, life-saving changes we need.
30-second warning.
Please be the change we wish to see. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Jane. Next.
Thank you, Mayor.
My apologies through you, Mr. Mayor. If you can just invite somebody else up from the public. I'm not sure I know we've got 2 people interested to speak in public, but there may be more.
Would the next person wish to come up to the mic? Thank you.
Hello, I'm Carol Brown, and I'm here representing Scenic Citizens Environment Network in Colwood. I live on Qualta Crescent. Scenic does not recognize renewable natural gas as a low carbon energy. Fortis cannot meet the carbon restrictions and GHG reduction requirements for a low carbon energy system and the step codes that Colwood wishes to enact. A CBC News publication stated that Fortis reports at present they have only 1% RNG. They will have 15% in 2030 and 75% in 2050. Winning slowly at climate change is just another way of losing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. Next person by phone, please.
I'll invite Dr. Deborah Curry to join. You can turn on your microphone and.
Sorry, can everyone see me? And Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Deborah. Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Deborah Curry. I'm a family physician in Vancouver on the territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, and I'm a subcommittee member of the BC division of the Canadian Association for the Environment, that's CAPE. I've been invited to speak to by serious health of natural gas and of renewable natural gas. So I'm just going to go through exactly what natural gas and renewable natural gas are. Natural gas is made of 70 to 90% methane, and when it is burned, it creates carbon dioxide. It's a fossil fuel, therefore, and causes climate change. Methane causes 86 times the warming effect of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over a 20-year period. And current satellite imaging shows that methane emissions are 70% higher than previously expected. And in northeastern BC, of course, we have fracking for natural gas, and methane is emitted at that point in the process. It's also emitted and leaks through pipes. And then it's burned in homes, and that creates carbon dioxide. So not exactly a low carbon fuel. So renewable natural gas, FortisBC has been talking a lot about this lately. Renewable natural gas is created from waste. In theory, it's a fantastic idea. Trap methane that's created anyways, but then you look closer. Like someone mentioned, less than 1% of natural gas in British Columbia is RNG. And why would you create more renewable natural gas when we're trying to lessen our emissions? So FortisBC's RNG plan is greenwashing at its finest. It's designed to convince the public that it's not really in the business of selling an extreme climate change product. FortisBC is saying that it will deliver 100% renewable natural gas to new buildings, but they cannot do this. This statement is some clever accounting. It will be delivered virtually via displacement, a swap between pipeline companies. There is no different pipes for RNG. One set of pipes will not bring you renewable natural gas if that is what you paid for. All
30-second warning.
fracked gas that bring all the health impacts of natural gas that we'll talk about today. We simply don't need natural gas in our homes anymore. We have heat pumps, we have electric motors that we can now use for long haul trucking, etc. And instead of creating more greenhouse gases by burning methane, we should be heating our homes with electric powered heat pumps and improving insulation. CAPE is very concerned about the greenwashing that is occurring in Canada by the natural gas industry. CAPE currently has a $10 million complaint with the Competition Bureau of Canada, flagging misinformation by the Canadian Gas Association, which FortisBC is a member of. The complaint was accepted right before COP27, and the Competition Bureau is taking this complaint very seriously.
That's 2 minutes.
People ask me why I come and volunteer and speak about this. It's because of the things that we've seen over the past 2 years with fires, floods, and heat domes. It's absolutely ludicrous that FortisBC is making a claim that renewable natural gas is low carbon. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Curry. If I can ask the next guest from the public, please.
Thank you. My name is John English. I'm here on behalf of the Royal Bay Homeowners Association. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I actually have 2 things to comment on. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to do that, but am I? Oh, okay. Okay, sure. Okay, thank you. I guess, first of all, with respect to the agenda item on, there's an omnibus, something being brought forward. One part of it we'd like to offer a comment on, and that is the intent to update the city's definition for comprehensive development and mixed use. We would actually recommend that the city defer this at this time, not that you not do it, but that you defer it until some more work can be done to address some problems. So one of the problems is we invite any of you to walk by 360 Latoria And if you want to see how a developer has manipulated the city in the past to basically make a lot of money by building many units, you can look at we measured it, we think it's about 400 square feet of commercial development in that huge building. And the next building that's going to go up there as well has got no commercial development. So the whole reason that developer was able to get so many units into that space in the first place is because it was supposed to be comprehensive development, mixed use. And frankly, it's a travesty because as my wife said, I think our grandson this summer, his lemonade stand that he had in front of his backyard, where he had bikes and things in it too. So, but including that part of his back is almost as big as the amount of commercial space that developers putting into 360 Latoria. So we
30-second warning.
We would recommend that the city actually update the requirements of what is truly and sincerely and honestly mixed use development. That seems to be a bit of a travesty. So we think it's, there's got to be some minimum percentage that's meaningful. Can I do a second one later? No, just once.
If time permits, Mr. English. Okay. Anybody else wish to speak, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see all your smiling faces. I'd like to speak quickly on a couple of items. Pardon me, Judith Collington, 3338 Asmink, and also a member of CNIC. I'd like to speak briefly on a couple of items. One, you've already heard a lot about the Fortis presentation and the sense of renewable natural gas as a low carbon option. We need to be looking at no carbon options. So we do not need to put any more greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. We can't afford it. Our children can't afford it. Our grandchildren can't afford it. So we need to look at moving directly to non-carbon options. I would like to support the recommendations in 8.5, the Building Step Code report. Pardon the pun, but it is definitely a step in the right direction. And I would encourage Colwood to look at, you're talking about moving to step 4 for residential in 2023, which is coming up very quickly. So I appreciate that's a good move in the right direction. I would encourage you to look at opportunities to think about when you're going to move to step 5, hopefully as soon as reasonably possible. Yes, it will add to the cost of a home, but as a smart buyer, I know that buying a highly efficient home is going to save me money. It's going to save me money year after year after year. It's the right thing to do. It's also going to save other taxpayers money, because instead of me buying a home and then I have to apply for some lovely grant to do a retrofit later on to make my home more efficient, I'm doing it right up front. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Judith. Next.
So Mayor and Council, thanks for having me tonight. I'm Mark Bernhardt. I am a licensed builder and developer here. We're based out of Victoria. I also run an energy consultancy firm. My team does all this step code mumbo jumbo stuff. I also, some of you may remember me from my role as technical chair of the Home Builders Association. That's the Canadian Home Builders Association. Now, I'm not here representing that association today. Today, I'm speaking as a local developer. And I came to support the step code amendments that you're planning here today. I've found, and many of our builder clients have found, that actually step 3 is kind of status quo. It's not really an advancement from where we are today. It's not even best practice. It's actually just standard practice. So step code doesn't actually cost us any extra. You can pay a little bit more if you want, but I was in a house today that had a $70,000 staircase. You can get approximately the same function out of a $2,000 staircase. So it is possible to spend more, but we don't need to. And I would actually disagree with our last speaker, just respectfully here, that she mentioned that these houses might cost more. And that actually has not been our experience. We actually proved that on a house that we commissioned, unfortunately not built in the CRD because I can't afford the land. But we actually were able to show that you could build a step 5 carbon-free for less money than a standard step 3 house. That data is public. We've shared it a number of times, and some of your staff have seen it. Our developer team is also currently this year planning to deliver 32 units of affordable, sustainable, beyond step 5, carbon-free, net zero housing. Unfortunately, again, not in the CRD, but still it is possible, and actually finding that quite cost effective. So I encourage all of you to go forth and make these amendments and have the confidence to know that industry is able to deliver this and deliver it today very cost effectively. We do not need the gas, and I don't need to go into that, but I will also say that the all electric
30-second warning
is currently the cheapest option as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Anybody else wish to speak? Mr. English, you get your second chance now.
Thank you. Just a heads up for Mayor and Council. We have our organization has met with both Seacliff and with Reliance Properties. They're the developers of the Royal Bay lands, and just want to give you folks a heads up that there are some concerns that we will be bringing forward to you. One is the size of the what's now called the plaza. We used to call it the Village Square, and at the time the Seacliff was applying for rezoning to and a change in the OCP to triple the residential density there. We submitted a presentation to the previous mayor and council, basically saying that please hold off on this for a number of reasons. One of the reasons was cited that we weren't confident that the square was going to be big enough to deliver the OCP objective and vision, which is to develop Colwood's waterfront lands into a regional world-class destination. So, and I know that from, or recall from discussions at council at the time, that there were members of council that also did not, weren't comfortable with that it was big enough. We confirmed today from both those developers that what they're talking about is 2,000 square meters. 2,000 square meters for the size of that plaza is 5 small city lots.
30-second warning.
In the north in North Latoria, and so it's 21,000 square feet. So that's 5 city square lots. So it's, you know, we're going to have to ask ourselves as a city, are we going to be able to develop a world-class destination out of a space of 5 city square lots for commercial development? And the other thing to give you a heads up on is that both those developers have told us that they intend to, or they're taking the position with the city, going to take the position with the city, that that land, which we understood was commercial development, is in fact going to be part of what their contribution is for parks. So it's coming out of the park allocation that they're planning to, they believe they've committed to the city. So those are 2 things that we just wanted to make you aware of. We will be making a further submission and recommendation.
That's 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Okay, I'll close the public participation. Thank you very much, everyone, for your contributions. Very interesting, actually. Learned a few things tonight. I will now move on to delegations. If I can get Carmen LeBlanc, Community and Indigenous Relations Manager, FortisBC Energy Inc., to come up and do a presentation. You have 10 minutes, Carmen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. Woo. It's a big night. I'm happy that we're all here and we're all talking clearly climate change and what we're going to do to develop the cities that we all want to live and our children to live and grow into is of critical importance right now. My name is Carmen LeBlanc. I'm the Community and Indigenous Relations Manager for Fortis, working here in Vancouver in service of communities here on Vancouver Island and the Sunshine Coast. My intention tonight is to provide an overview of our current energy picture and how FortisBC is delivering the low carbon energy that we need to build resilient and sustainable communities of the future. Bear with me, there's a lot of information and I'm going to fire through it, but I think it's really important. And my overall objective here is obviously that we need more conversation. You need to understand more what Fortis is doing to support our same goals. My kids are here with me tonight. I'm a mom of a young family, and my interest is the future that we're living for them and their children. I need to move this forward. Can I do that or no? Okay. So many of you likely know that Fortis is the main gas utility in the province, but you may not know that we also have an electric utility. We also have an affiliated division called Fortis Alternative Energy Services. Collectively, we are the largest energy provider in the province. This gives Fortis a unique understanding of energy, where it comes from, how it's delivered, and how it's used across the province. So let's take a quick look at the main energy systems that currently serve most of our homes, businesses, and industry. Our province's electric systems are connected to an integrated grid. This allows the exchange of electricity with neighboring provinces and states. As you can see on the graph, the electricity we produce in province is very low carbon. The electricity available from the grid, however, is a much higher content carbon. It's at least 30 times higher than our in-province electricity and almost 2 times higher than the carbon emission factor of traditional natural gas. FortisBC's electric utility generates at full capacity, but this amount is less than half the electricity demanded by our customers. The province's electric utility currently delivers at near capacity, and both utilities currently purchase electricity from the integrated grid. FortisBC's gas distribution system delivers over half the total energy demanded by homes and businesses across the province. It's important to note that the gas distribution system is not committed to the delivery of fossil fuels. In fact, FortisBC is the first utility in North America to make renewable natural gas, or RNG, available to our customers. We purchase RNG from producers and blend it seamlessly into our gas system. It's used the very same way as traditional natural gas. As published by the province, RNG is the lowest carbon emission factor energy currently available from a utility in BC. Gas is very well suited to space and water heating. The properties of gas and the design of the gas system also allow it to be more capable of handling large changes in demand or peak demands. The resilience of our energy systems, both gas and electric, is determined by their ability to meet these peak demands. How much can a system flex on those really cold and really hot days? Our gas system is very capable of flexing to meet peak demands, and we've seen it deliver 3 times its normal throughput. Our electric system can respond to some peak demands, but not in the same way as the gas system. We all know what happens when you plug in too many appliances to one circuit, or when you try to plug in a high energy demand appliance like a heater to a near full circuit. Gas and electric systems can, however, be optimized to support one another. Today, we benefit from 2 systems that are extensive and support each other, both capable of and currently delivering low carbon energy. Traditional natural gas has carbon emission factor much higher than BC's electricity. As such, it stands out as the low-hanging fruit of climate action. And the allure of BC's low carbon electricity makes electrification seem like the easy and obvious choice. We see support for electrification in recent climate policies and within the stepped plan being presented to Council tonight. However, assuming that we truly intend these policies and plans to improve resilience, to be affordable and achievable, we need to consider some important factors. How much low carbon energy do we need today? How much do we need to support growth for tomorrow? And how do we support the transition of the transportation sector to low and no carbon fuels? Where will this new energy come from? And how much will it cost? In working to answer these questions, FortisBC commissioned a guidehouse study. The study developed 2 energy pathways, the electrification pathway and a diversified pathway that includes a mix of expanded electrification and significant decarbonization of the gas system. Both pathways were able to achieve the province's 2050 GHG reduction targets. Both pathways also face challenges. Major challenges in electrification include capacity and system improvement costs. There's only one planned addition to the province's hydroelectric system. Site C is expected to deliver approximately 18 petajoules of energy each year. This is only 1/12 the energy currently delivered by the gas system. The major challenge of the diversified pathway is the volume of energy it would need to decarbonize. But at a cost of $100 billion less by 2050, the diversified pathway is a more affordable, resilient, and practical long-term pathway to a better BC. Climate policies and plans that signal or incentivize electrification restrict our ability to produce, deliver, and consume a variety of low-carbon energies. They are dissuading home and business owners, builders, and developers from including gas in projects. Resilient plans promote the sustainable use of all the tools in the toolbox. They don't limit energy options. Supported by the findings of the Guidehouse study, FortisBC developed our clean growth pathway to 2050. I'll share a few ways that we're partnering to engage low carbon energy products and programs to achieve improved efficiencies and reduce emissions. A huge step in reducing emissions is to simply use less energy. Through our conservation and energy management programs, FortisBC is partnering with local governments, homes and business owners, builders and developers to reduce the amount of energy used in new and existing buildings. In 2021, FortisBC provided almost $600,000 in program funding to customers right here in Colwood. Most of this funding was provided through our new home program, helping achieve highly efficient homes with gas-fired space and water heating. Gas customers are able to further reduce emissions with access to renewable and low carbon gas options. We would love to collaborate with the City of Colwood to realize these kind of achievements within your municipal operations, in existing neighborhoods, and in new developments like Royal Bay. Decarbonizing our gas system is one of FortisBC's key priorities in our clean growth pathway. There has been doubt about FortisBC's ability to produce enough RNG. It's important to note that just as FortisBC does not produce traditional natural gas, we do not produce RNG. We purchase traditional natural gas from the market, and we purchase RNG from individual producers like agricultural operations or local governments who manage organics and wastewater treatment facilities, like the facilities of Kelowna and Surrey and the CRD. FortisBC has partnered with the CRD to purchase RNG from the new facility being built at the Heartland landfill. This connection will further decarbonize our gas system and make more RNG available to customers in 2024. Facilities like this, placed throughout a gas system, not only work to decarbonize the system, they also improve the system's resilience by providing multiple points of energy input. The production of RNG allows local governments and individual producers to participate in the economy of low carbon energy. We can watch the waste we generate in communities, farms, and forests be shipped about here and there, or simply left to compost and release carbon emissions, or we can partner to make energy from them, building resilience and creating economic benefits.
1 minute warning.
FortisBC and the province recently supported a renewable gas study that identified enough province potential to produce twice the current gas load in renewable and low carbon gases by 2050. The ability to decarbonize our gas system with in-province supply is very good news. FortisBC has a renewable gas application currently before the BC Utilities Commission. You heard about it earlier, in the proposal. We are asking to deliver 100% RNG to all new residential customers. We would really like to collaborate with the City of Colwood and the CRD to identify additional opportunities to purchase low carbon gas made from waste right here. So that's a lot, right? Really, thank you for your patience and attention. You can see the requests that I've included on the slide, but really, I'm inviting more conversation between Colwood Council, staff, and FortisBC. We would love to see Colwood support for our filing, and we'd really like the opportunity to have meaningful conversation and engagement before Council sets directions and possibly limiting directions in the stepped approach being presented tonight. Thank you, and let's talk more, please.
Thank you very much, Carmen. I'm just going to open it up to council for any questions. And Councillor Grove.
Mr. Mayor, through the chair, I would like to ask, the R in renewable natural gas stands for something, but could you, typically it's biogas production, which I'm aware of. What percentage of renewable or biogas is possible in a pipeline relative to 100% gas coming down the pipe? What percentage maximum is allowable or used or functional? Can you answer?
We could replace 100% of the gas in our pipeline with.
So the
renewable or-
biogas produced could be 100% in the pipe. Okay.
Yes.
At what percentage though does it get called renewable natural gas? What minimum percentage needs to be in the pipe to call it renewable natural gas?
It's not the percentage, it's the source of the gas, which would make it, give it the quality.
If 20% of the gas in the pipeline mixed with fracked gas, for instance, is that called renewable gas?
The renewable gas that we purchase is called renewable gas, and it just gets injected into the system and displaces then that much traditional natural gas that we would need to purchase.
I'm just looking for a definition of renewable natural gas in when you talk about blends.
Yeah, it's not referred to about, it doesn't refer to the blend, it refers to the source, let's say, maybe is a better way of looking at it.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question. I have one more question, please. Thank you,
Mhm.
to the chair. A municipality, of course, is not a business, right? And we're looking at a very long timeline. The new homes being built right now, will be in the stock for, 50, 70, 80 years. I'm just wondering how, if Clean BC, the provincial targets for measuring and reducing carbon and the use of these climate change measures, how are we supposed to make decisions now, short term, when the call is to have fossil fuel burning, methane burning appliances in new homes today, but we have to carry our liabilities for 80 years to that installation? How is that going to help us reach our climate goals?
I think through collaboration, and one of the programs that we support in our community or conservation and energy management is the integrated design process. And through that program, there's really close collaborative work that happens with local government, builders, developers, trades, and they're designing the homes of the future up to net zero that include access to gas, appliances for space heating and water heating. And so the gentleman that spoke earlier is right. The technology is there to build houses that use very little energy. Our ask is really, and the reason that I presented all the information tonight is to the scope of the amount of energy that the system delivers and that the province is reliant on gas is very big. And so what we have to do is decarbonize that gas and build better buildings today that'll last us through the 80 years for sure.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm sure we'll have lots more to talk about.
Yeah,
as
I
time
hope so.
goes. Thank you.
Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the presentation. A lot of charts and pies and graphs for my arts degree, but help me understand this renewable. Did I hear right somewhere along the way on one of these slides that right now we're purchasing and infiltrating the renewable gas from somewhere else? Like, I take it we don't have enough production in our province right now. We're offsetting that with purchases from somewhere else.
Today, we purchase renewable natural gas from in province and out of province. That's right.
What portion comes from somewhere else?
That's a good question. I can get back to you. I'm not exactly sure. I know we have 10.5 petajoules today, total throughput as renewable, and I'll get back to you with that information. I don't know the proportion that we're purchasing outside.
And not that it much matters. It just feels like it's some kind of like in simple terms, it feels to me like it's some kind of quasi carbon offset kind of process.
I understand.
Which I take some personal exception to, and some of the science, but
Yeah.
I am reinvigorated when I hear that you have, or you estimate there's the capacity within the province
Yeah.
for us to generate this without having to purchase it elsewhere and bring it in.
Yeah, I think it's really important to realizing projects here, making energy from waste here in BC, wherever we are. It helps with resilience. We have more energy in, but it also proves, right? And it uses our waste where it is. I absolutely agree with you. The more that we can do in that study that proved that we do have it is really inspiring.
I grew up in a farm town and the cows aren't going to stop going to the bathroom. So I suspect there's probably.
Right.
Lots
And
of
sadly,
work
where there are
done.
people, there is waste, right? We have curbside organics. We have leaves that we compost, right? All of that. We have wastewater treatment. We flake that stuff and ship it somewhere, but it can be made into energy.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my question is less about the product itself. I mean, sorry, I digress. With the product, I mean, and most of the research that I've read indicates that despite the waste that we produce, you know, we believe it or not produce less than we have historically. And there are a lot of cynics or skeptics that say that we simply can't produce enough renewable natural gas to reach a lot of these targets. And you know, that's for everyone out there to do their own research. But my question is less about that than if in fact you truly are moving towards this in an altruistic way. Why is the focus on utilizing existing infrastructure across, say, for example, Vancouver Island, instead of concentrating what little resource there is in the RNG side into, say, northern British Columbia, where the temperatures are significantly lower? You know, the use profile would seem to be far more logical if we're talking about dispersing energy across the province. You know, we obviously would use hydroelectric down here at Lower Mainland, where you've got significantly colder winters, for example. The use of gas in the north would seem to be a more logical kind of place to target for RNG. And I guess lastly, I'm also a little bit concerned about methane leakage still as well. You know, there are things we can do to offset farm use and things like that, and how we feed and house livestock and other initiatives that can be taken. But you know, biogas production shows leakage of up to 15% of methane still, and you know, that's still contributing to the climate issue. So I think there's a lot of unanswered questions, and I don't know if you know, I feel the confidence in labeling this a you know, an environmentally sound approach at this point. Thank you. More of a statement than a question.
Sure. I appreciate your comment. Just to give you a sense of scale, at Vancouver Island, the gas that we delivered to customers here on Vancouver Island last year, 2021, was about 25 petajoules of energy. Site C is set to bring on 18 petajoules of equivalent electric energy. So just like, well, yes, space heating in the north is definitely a need. There is need for energy across the province. So really our take on RNG right now is, and energy, low carbon energy, is we'll take it everywhere we can get it. We need energy across this province.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. I was just wondering, do you purchase gas from Heartland Landfill?
We will be, yes, we have a partnership and agreement with the CRD to do so.
And how much gas are you purchasing from them?
Um,
What's the
I-
value of your contract?
I don't know the value of the contract. I read the press release from the CRD says that they anticipate producing between 140,000 and 280 gigajoules of energy a year there. What the value of the contract is, I don't know. I can find that out for you.
For sure. Because it's my understanding that that is reducing over time due to the switching to the organics being in a different location than the landfill. So I believe the current accumulation is from the existing old way we used to do our landfills, including the compost material.
You're right. Yeah, I think it's a 30-year agreement. And you're right. The good news is that our landfills are producing less and less methane.
Perfect. So I think it would be good for us to know from a sustainability point of view, what is being produced on Vancouver Island.
As far as RNG goes?
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
I can-
For you know, the local council of Colwood, we would imagine the
Mhm.
gas that's provided to any homes that sign up for it would be from as local a source as possible.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to continue that conversation. And I think the quick answer is we're not utilizing all the opportunity to make RNG on Vancouver Island, nor not even scratching the surface of what we can make here. And it's through partnerships with local. Fortis doesn't manage the resources that make that energy. Our local governments, largely our regional districts here on the island, do. And it's through that partnership that we'll identify those opportunities and create that.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
No other comments? I'll just summarize here, just my own commentary here.
Yeah.
What I'm having a lot of difficulty personally with is, if you want to see my comments, I got lots here, and I could spend the whole night with you, but it's not going to serve the purpose of what you're here for right now. I guess what I find don't want to say this in the wrong way, but there seems to be a lot of contradictory information. You're stating some things, and then I'm getting these papers people are sending to me, and I read through them, and they make sense to me also.
Mhm.
And I don't know what's right or what's wrong. I mean, I'm sort of a smartish kind of guy. I'm an engineer by background, and I start trying to research it myself, and don't use the internet because
Yeah, right.
it's wrong.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of problems, and I try to discern, what's right and what's wrong right now. And I have a lot of problems with that.
Mhm.
And it's almost like we'd almost like to have a debate. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the smart person that's talking, what you're saying, and the people that are on the contrary, and debate it. I personally would like to see that, because I just have a hard time figuring out what is right and what is wrong.
Mhm.
And just for context right now, you say 140 to 280,000 gigajoules that is being produced by for RNG right now by the Heartland right now. Is that
Will
what you
be,
said?
yeah.
Will be. So can you put that in context for me? So how much energy does that represent? Is that enough energy to heat what? Colwood? Or like, can you
Yeah,
put that
I
in
should have
context?
brought the number for you. I'm happy to send you that. They relate it to a number of homes in the CRD's press release. And I'm also happy to provide you the information about how much gas is used here in Colwood, how much was used in 2021. I'm happy to get that for you.
Okay, so a second question, this may seem like a stupid question, but I just have to
No.
ask the question. So we produce, all the food waste and the farm and, the water waste and all this, it produces methane gas right now. So what happens to that methane gas right now? Where's that going right now?
Yeah, our farmers are largely using it as fertilizer and spreading it on fields, and it's going to the atmosphere. Our compostables are composting, and we have a new facility on the North Island that's just composting and not being captured. Our landfills, sometimes some of our landfills collect that gas and have a electrification process. They make electricity from that. Or it's just being released to the atmosphere.
So that's methane gas, which is a lot
That's right.
worse than carbon, correct? If
that's
I
right.
understand my facts correct. So I guess my question is, so when you burn it now with RNG, what's the byproduct? Is it carbon dioxide or is it more methane that comes out? Like,
Yeah, no, and the doctor went through the process earlier. Her comment when methane, and I'm not a scientist either, but CH4, I understand, is the chemical property of that when it's burned in your gas stove. It's converted and released as CO2. So there's lots of information and calculations about what's the total or actual carbon emission factor of renewable natural gas. And that needs to take into account how it was produced, how it's being used. And those numbers vary from a negative number to approximately 5 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per gigajoule. But it's very even the province of BC, the numbers that they published, and I have a reference or a link to that report in the presentation. It's a dash, it's a zero number for RNG. 0 kilograms of CO2 equivalent per gigajoule of energy.
okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I won't.
If I
got
can just
lots
say
of-
one more thing, I appreciate that. And it is these conversations. And as our local governments are developing plans, Fortis BC wasn't invited to be part of the engagement in that process. We found out about it, but I think we need to, right? And not just Fortis. BC Hydro, Fortis BC, we're all in this together, and to make these plans work, I think we all need to be at the table, asking all the questions, answering all the tough questions, for sure.
Mr. Grove, did you have another one? Councillor Grove?
Please, Mr. Mayor. So I just need to comment a little bit. Animal poop does turn into methane if you let it just rot, but it does get processed. It ferments and develops and ends up in the soil, and well over half of the carbon stays in the soil for hundreds of years. So the fact that it goes into the atmosphere, that's actually quite a little bit misleading. The other aspect, though, is this business about BC Hydro producing insufficient amounts of power. It's funny, they don't say that, but we do have also solar, wind, and other alternate energy sources coming along at an incredibly increased rate, lower demand for all sorts of things. And I think that we have a big conversation to go here with Fortis and what you're presenting here tonight. And I just wanted to thank you again for that. But I did want to clear out the bit about animal use. Farmers do know how to use it, and it doesn't end up, most of it does not end up in the atmosphere, actually.
Sure. There's a group of farmers mid-island that are really keen on utilizing the energy in both ways. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Carmen.
Thank you.
So our next speaker is Kathleen Gilbert, Film Commissioner, Vancouver Island South Film and Media Commission.
Wow, I'm learning a lot tonight too. Holy cow. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for inviting me this evening. I will try to make this quick. It sounds like you've got a lot on your plate. I'd like to welcome all of you to Hollywood Island. First, we have here in the Greater Victoria region, we are the first and longest running film commission in BC, and we are now the busiest BC region outside of the Lower Mainland. The Film Commission works really hard to bring jobs and economic development to the CRD by promoting the region to producers worldwide. We recently landed the multi-award winning television series Made, and this series filmed in almost every municipality in the CRD. Our region now appears on the international Netflix In Your Neighborhood map with links to many businesses and tourist sites around the CRD, and that's directly because of Made filming here. Last year, we landed 40 shows. We created over 2,000 well-paying jobs and almost 60 million in direct spend. And that's money that producers take out of their pocket and leave locally to our businesses and to our local crew. That's no money that goes outside of the Capital Regional District. And that money flows throughout our entire region. Film crews live throughout our entire region, and they spend their paychecks throughout our region. And businesses that profit from the industry are also located throughout the CRD. And what do we do at the commission? Basically, we do everything we can to land these shows, and then we do everything we can to keep them happy while they're here, so they return and bring their millions of dollars back again to the CRD. We provide continuous consulting and production services from the beginning of their project right through to the end. For example, when we were landing Grace Point, we worked with the producers from LA for over a year to bring that series here, and they ended up spending well over $10 million in the CRD. Made took 17 location packages containing hundreds of locations and months of work for the Film Commission before we landed that show, which was responsible for probably about $35 million of direct spend. We provide script breakdowns, location scouting, and location packages. And a location package can take several staff, many hours to put together, and often contains hundreds of location choices for these producers and directors. We maintain a crew and local business database, and we make recommendations for both of those. And the database requires a lot of time for constant, time-consuming updating. We work 24/7 fielding calls from both productions and the public when they're filming. We help cut through red tape, and we act as a complaints department and a mediator when things go wrong. And we don't just work for the big LA producers either. We help our local filmmakers tell local stories. We host networking and education events, and we work with local schools to encourage youth to consider a career in film. And as you can see from the chart, we've been very successful at growing this industry. However, with the proper funding and enough staff, we truly believe that we can produce extraordinary economic growth for our region. And I'd like to illustrate just one of those industries that we've had quite an impact on, and that's the hotel industry. And because, in fact, we do put heads in beds. The film industry doesn't have a low season, so the benefit to local hotels can be substantial. In 2020, Bill Lewis, the chair of the Hotel Association of Greater Victoria, stated the film industry was a lifeline for some of the downtown hotels during COVID. And these stats give you an idea of what is possible and how this industry can augment tourism during the downtimes and shoulder seasons. And when the film industry supports these local hotels, we are in fact supporting the thousands of local residents who work in them. I could do a slide like this for so many other industries and businesses here in the CRD, like rental car industries, the building supply industry, local clothing stores, coffee shops, restaurant, office supplies, furniture stores, and so many more. And there's a career for everyone in the film industry. These are high-paying, sustainable jobs. There's many I always have trouble with that, real world jobs that have transferable skills that allow workers to transition easily into our industry. There's many departments in our industry that offer on-the-job training for people with little or no experience. And we are currently working with Camosun College to develop union-approved micro-credential courses that will help youth fast-track into our industry. Film is a great career, and it offers wages that allows its workers to buy homes and raise families right here in Colwood. And as we grow the industry, the need for more workers also grows. And that's why we regularly at the Film Commission provide information, education, and one-on-one career counseling for prospective film workers. These are high-paying, sustainable union jobs that we're creating. The starting wage as an entry-level production assistant, this is the people that sweep the crew, sweep the sets and direct the traffic, are making over $300 a day. And the yearly salary for a department head can be well over $130,000 a year. The wage for creatives like directors, cinematographers, and production designers is really unlimited. So it really is an amazing career and job. And we've been working really hard to green this industry. BC was one of the first in the world to create a real green initiative, and we've been working for over 12 years to mainstream sustainable practices across our industry. For example, we're trying to move into electrical generators, electrical vehicles. We're reusing costumes and building materials, and we're working with municipalities to offer grid hookups electrical grid hookups. And we're educating our crew on using sustainable production practices. So we're working really hard to reach a goal of zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And our focus in 2023 at the Film Commission is to grow and diversify our crew base. We want to show young people that there's a place for them in this industry, and we especially want to reach out to youth at risk. This industry does not require a post-secondary education or even a high school diploma, so it's a good fit for those young people struggling within our educational system. And finally, all we ask of you is that you, when it comes time for budget deliberations, that we ask you to consider funding us at our full ask this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Any questions? Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to say thank you, Kathleen, for the presentation. A big fan. I'll admit, being a little biased, I count Barb Coltish and Laura as good friends of mine. They own a talent agency here in Greater Victoria. So, through them, though, I've seen firsthand the benefit and how many people are employed by the industry. And a shameless plug, I dare not speak for my colleagues, but a film studio would be great in Colwood. So we'll see.
Have you got some land and a developer willing to do it? I'll help.
There you go. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Councillor Grove.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the presentation. And I was just curious where the screenwriters are on your list of jobs. Are they in like LA because they don't need to be here for the show or the production?
Yeah, so I mean, at the film, it's a good question, but at the Film Commission, we really concentrate on behind the camera on-set people. However, I mean, we are developing more and more of both pre-production careers like screenwriter and post-production in the editing suite and certainly in animation.
Okay.
So there are some writers in Vancouver for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, but as long as you're using the local ones, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
If you know of any, please have them call us.
Well, they're around, I think. I do know a couple. The musicians as well, are they in your pursuit of a studio? I know this is going off topic here, but they is the music production studio a part of that vision? In your mind, would it be?
Not the vision, no. So right now we have two proposals on the table, basically. And of course, one is at Camosun College and the other is possibly out in Langford, but I don't think any one of those at this point is
Let's
the
go.
music industry.
We're for musicians do that. Thank you.
Councillor Olson.
Hi, Kathleen.
Hi.
I just wanted to thank you for coming tonight. Big movie boom in the CRD. I think I've seen it firsthand. It's had a huge positive impact on our local economies. So I appreciate the Film Commission going out and taking Colwood to market. I just think it's great. Love it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, just one last question from me, Kathleen. I guess it's almost an impossible thing for you to do to track, how the economic benefit is, to Greater Victoria by region. That would be a very difficult thing to do. But do you know offhand, at least, the people that are employed in that industry, do you know how that breaks down throughout Greater Victoria?
So we've been trying to do that and as you can expect, that's so time consuming. We have such a small staff, but we have been trying to utilize our summer students and co-op students to help us with those stats. In our crew database, we're trying to now make it so that people have to write down their municipality rather than just Victoria, because what they were doing was just putting their address in. And so it would just come out as Greater Victoria. So we're working to do that. There are a lot of film workers, certainly in Colwood. I'd be happy to share with you as many as I know of. I don't have that figure with me right now. Again, getting stats from producers is so difficult once they leave. So we really try to get these numbers from them at a time. And then we have to really just talk to all of the local hotels and businesses that have done business with them and crew to find out what they actually spent here. There certainly are calculations that are accepted worldwide that are put out by the Association of Film Commissioners International that basically tells you if it's a $30 million movie, they probably spend 60 to 70% locally. So we sometimes use those when we have difficulty with getting the facts directly from the producers. Probably about 60 or 70% of our stats come directly from the production, and the others we estimate using those calculations.
It's great because when you brought that stat, the 59 million of direct dollars, I mean, your indirect is probably 3 to 4 times that amount.
Yeah,
So
we
it sounds like a good return on investment to me. So no, it's interesting.
And even the 59, almost 60 million is on the conservative side. We always err on the conservative side rather than inflating our stats.
Okay, thanks very much, Kathleen.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're going to go to item 7, and this is brand new here in Colwood. We're trying to always make ourselves more effective and more efficient. So we've brought in the consent agenda, and with the consent agenda are things that are routine or they're pretty simple, straightforward. But the ground rules are that, so we've got 2 items on the consent agenda. And so we make one motion for someone makes a motion to approve it, seconder, and then we vote on it. But at any time, any single councillor can remove an item from the consent agenda. But we're just trying to make ourselves a little more efficient and effective so we spend more time on the critical issues. So this is new. I'm used to using this on the boards I used to serve on, both public and private. And so we're trying this out tonight. And we do have two things on the consent agenda tonight. One is the local government comment on non-medical cannabis license on 681 Allendale Road. This has already gone through it's already had first reading back on June 13th of this year. And the second item, and so we've got it here for third reading. The second item is just our 2023 council meeting schedule, which is appended to the agenda. So there's two items on the consent agenda. Does anyone want an item removed? Councillor Jensen.
Sorry, I might have been too quick, Mr. Chair. I was going to move the motion to accept the consent agenda. Get that moving.
Seconder, Councillor Grove. And discussion. See how efficient we are now. Call the question. Anyone opposed? Seeing none, it's unanimously approved. Thank you. So now we get down to the new business. Okay, so the first item is 8.1. It's councillor remuneration. And I'll just read the recommendation here. I brought this up at notice of motion 2 weeks ago. And the recommendation is that administration be directed to return with a draft bylaw to reverse the recent changes to council compensation. And that administration be directed to engage the services of a compensation consultant to conduct or access relevant research, examine options, recommend a remuneration methodology, recommend remuneration levels for 2023 and subsequent years. So just the background behind this, just quickly, just so the public understands what we went through. This was introduced in late August during the summertime. And it was examined by a committee, a citizen committee, a four-member citizen committee. And lots of questions which were not answered. And I'll admittedly admit that I was one of the ones that was opposed to this because it was my analogy of, if I break a leg, I don't go to a dentist to get it fixed. And so I believe that we should have had a proper consultant looking at this because even though they said they followed the UBCM guide, they only followed one criteria. And it clearly states in the guide that that's not the way to do it. So, maybe I'll have egg on my face, but the number came out big. And then the motion was made that we would put it all in effect 1 January of 2023. And that was quite a big jump for taxpayers. So it may have been fair for the councillors, but I did not feel it was fair to the taxpayers. And using the guidelines of just number of people is not a good way of remunerating us. That's how I felt about it. Because if, I know I worked in big companies before, and if you give them one objective, all I would do is be filling up the city full of people because my compensation is based on that. It doesn't make sense. So I brought this up to the table, and you'll see another motion later on, which takes it back to 2018. But at this point in time, I'm not saying that they shouldn't be compensated. They definitely deserve it. I believe that, but I just want it done right. And so that's what this motion is here for right now. So can I get a mover? Councillor Ward and Councillor Grove as a seconder. Discussion. Cynthia, or Councillor Day.
Perfect. I just wanted to understand before we vote on this motion that's on the table, the bylaw that is on the agenda refers to 2018 and 2019. So I believe that's because we've just rolled it back to what was in place before the changes were introduced. But I just wanted to be sure that that is what is before us.
You're absolutely correct. This was the easiest way to do it, believe me.
Perfect. So, and I just add the comment that it's unfortunate. We've always tried to do this so that a new incoming council could arrive with something that was recommended by the previous council. It gives an arm's length from that decision. And we did try to add an escalation clause as well to try to limit the number of times that we'd have to grapple with this issue. But we've ended up where we're at with good efforts by many people to recognize the amount of effort that it is to represent by being the mayor or a member of council, and also to utilize citizens to help give us that arm's length from the process. But for various reasons, we've ended up here. And I think that the motion that's on the table is a good way to move forward. I hope that it won't be seen as an onerous task for new members of council to have to do this as kind of your first job here at the table. So I understand the discomfort with making the recommendations for our own pay levels. And I hope that we can achieve that with good input.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been a long and winding road, and I don't see anything in this motion that I can't get behind philosophically, Mr. Mayor, and to my peers. The only concerns I have is that it appears like this is like a never-ending story, and I do want to see some finality brought to this, and I think our public deserves that, some finality and some certainty. And not only does the public deserve that, but I think our finance department would probably appreciate that as we move into a budget session. So we do need to bring some closure to this, and I believe that the way we chose to go about it as a group during the last council session, it was a group decision, and we went the way we did, rightly or wrongly. And we did ask some members of our community to do the heavy lifting on our behalf, which they kindly did. I do find that you know, we certainly shouldn't criticize the work that was done by these members of our community, and I think that you know, the work that they did was what was asked of them. And if we as a group decide to change course, well, so be it. That's our decision to take. I do want to offer an amendment, Mr. Mayor, and I'm going to work with, hopefully work through this with our corporate services staff. But my amendment would be along the lines, Marcy, and I'm open to some wordsmithing here, that the results from the compensation specialist be final, binding, or accepted by this council, so that we can bring some finality to it. I'm open to some wordsmithing from corporate services, but basically what I'm trying to achieve is that we do bring some closure to this. So I would accept something along the lines of that the results be accepted from the compensation firm and that they be binding. Does that work, Madam Corporate Chair?
Just a point of order. You can't really invoke closure. You cannot bind the hands of council. The decision that we make has to be our decision.
So hence I am open to wordsmithing. Thank you, Councillor Day. What I'm trying to achieve here is that we stop talking about this forever for the entire term. And I do think that our public has a right to that. So whether we, I agree, closure, it might be complicated, that how about we just leave it that we accept the findings of the compensation review. I'm open to a discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what I'm trying to achieve. If one of my peers has some suggestions that might fit more appropriately, I'm welcome. I'll welcome the suggestions.
Councillor Jordison.
I think that, sorry, I don't have a question.
Oh, you're on, you're hot.
Sorry. I think that I like what Dean is suggesting, or sorry, Councillor
Jansen
is suggesting. But I think what you'll find is that the consultant will come back with a range. I don't think, I could be wrong, but the person will probably come back with a range of this is what, it should be. I guess as a newbie here, this might seem really odd, but this isn't our first rodeo. Like, this has been an ongoing thing every 4 years. So did we do it differently this time? What did we do different? Like, why didn't we follow the same process, or how did we get to this point is my question. I'm just not knowing the backstory. And I guess my other question would be just how long will this review take, and when will it be, when do we suspect that it'll come back to council?
That's a fair question. Could you answer that, Mr. Earl?
Not with substantive clarity. Administration will reach out to local firms who have been recently involved in similar compensation reviews in an effort to reduce costs and not repeat work. Once we've got that information and an understanding of whether there's a willingness and enableness, we could provide clarity on timing. My instinct is no more than 90 days would be needed.
Thank you. Are you finished, Councillor Jordison?
Well, I guess I know I asked for some further information earlier today, and it's a lot of information to get just last minute, but how did we get here? Like, what was the last, what did we follow the last time when this remuneration was discussed for the 2018 council? Like, why did we do it differently? Or I just don't get it.
That's a great question. I don't think it happened. Well, I was certainly on council before I came onto council. It didn't happen. And I think that's the big problem. There's a big catch up, but someone that's been on council for many years can help me with this one. Councillor Day.
So I'm just trying to think on the fly about the history. And when I started on council in 2002, I believe the monthly stipend was under $600 a month. And I mean, at that point in time, I didn't care. I was here to make a difference. And I figured that would at least pay for a babysitter if I could find one that didn't run away screaming. So 3 children here, full disclosure. When they outnumber you, you're in big trouble. But we did look at it. Our budgets were very, very tight in those early years. And there was no appetite for quite a long time to review the compensation. Eventually, when we did review it, we looked at trying to make it so we wouldn't have to do it over and over again. So there was a compensation increase that happened related to other union increases at the city. So if the union went up by 2%, then council went up by 2%. And that's the way it continued for some time. And when we decided to look at it this last time, it wasn't myself who raised the issue. I believe that our previous mayor was working very hard and spending a great number of hours at the city, and felt that a compensation review was in order. And it, you know, if you talk to anyone who was involved at the time, that we've done any of our compensation reviews, they generally went to a committee. We didn't have a committee that made a lot of sense to bring it forward through. Therefore, the special committee was struck, and they did the good work that they did based on the information that they had. So I guess the only answer I really have is we've never been paid very well. And that was in light of the fact that it was largely, you know, a community benefit that we did it for. But over time, there's been a number of compensation reviews in the region, and I see that most councils struggle to balance that. So we're not alone.
Thanks very much, Councillor Date. Councillor Jordison, you finished? Oh, okay, good. Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I might direct my question to Mr. Earl. What is the cost of this review? Like to send this review to a compensation expert? My question is, who chooses this compensation expert, and what is the cost of this process?
Please, Mr. Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Olson. At this juncture, it is unknown. Administration is hopeful that we can identify a local consultant who's done the heavy lifting, if you will, on the survey component of this. If that's the case, the additional work required will be measured in tens of hours, not hundreds of hours, and that would substantively reduce the costs. At this point, administration cannot provide a cost estimate. This is a notice of motion coming from council, and so we have not done the requisite research until such time that we have the direction to proceed in this direction. We're hopeful because recent local work has been done, we can leverage that opportunity.
Okay, thank you. And can I just ask for some more clarity? Mr. Mayor, maybe you can help me. So what we're essentially looking at doing is repealing the new remuneration that was set in place from the previous council. So we're repealing that. We're looking at potentially repealing that, and then sending this out to the compensation expert for review. And then
Yes.
And then that process is it'll come back to council. And then, I mean, the likelihood of a compensation expert coming back, in my opinion, and I've been thinking about this a lot, is it'll come back and be quite likely what it's at now, like if the new remuneration, or quite possibly more. So that's just my thoughts. But I'm just curious to know that once we go through this process, and I'm not opposed to it, but when we go through the process, when they do, like Councillor Jansen said, if these compensation experts come back to us and say, you know, this is what we feel, and maybe it is a range, like Councillor Jordison said, maybe it is a range of, you know, or options A, B, C, but if this is what we think is comparable in the market for the job you're doing, is council willing to accept that? That's where my questions are, and that's what I'm really struggling with this one.
Yeah.
So I need some more clarity.
I can answer that as best I can right now. I believe it is what it is, you know, and at least they follow the process. And that's what I had difficulties with. You know, there wasn't a set process. And, you know, they were great people. We had well-known people from our community that were on it. But the expertise in doing this, like the very fact that normally when you come up with your comp up, you know, you sort of say, you're given options of, are we going to be within 75% of the population out there? Are we going to be 50%? Are we going to be 25%? So you know, when it wasn't even presented that way, that was the very first trigger that I went, oh, wait a second here. How come we're not doing it this way? So, yes, I would be willing to live with it. But then again, I guess the other thing, there's another issue with this also. Another motion was made, and this is where I had the biggest problems. I recognize what's happening out there right now. You know, there is a potential of a recession. Okay, and we're trying to, you know, we're looking at budgets right now. And the impact of this budget of just doing it all in one foul swoop was, you know, 0.75%. And I think there was just a smarter way of doing this, you know, like putting it over 3 or 4 years. It's very much like everyone else gets pay increases right now. You don't see 85% 1 year, you know, whatever that number is going to be. But that's where my head was. I just wanted to rethink this. And I felt so emotionally attached to this that I just felt it was wrong. And I made it an issue. And I made it an election issue. I just want it to be done properly, you know, and to me, that's the fairness to the taxpayer. So to answer your question, yeah, I will live with what the consultant does come back with, because she's been doing it she's done quite a few municipalities already. You know, you get someone that is an expert at it. And that's how I feel about it. So I felt that strongly about it. And then just as Councillor Day said, maybe the way that we don't have to do this every 4 years. It doesn't happen mandatory, obviously, because it didn't happen when we joined council. I wasn't motivated by how much pay. I thought, geez, this is the best volunteer job I ever have. And they actually give me money to do this, you know? So I wasn't motivated by that. And neither were any of you. I know that when I talked to every one of you when you were running, you weren't motivated by this. And so this is just a bonus. And it clearly states in the UBCM guideline that there's an understanding that there is a sacrifice that's made by every one of us when we decide to run for public office. And it states it. I mean, it states it in black and white. So, you know, but I will live with what an expert tells me, you know, so I'm committed to that. How we implement it, that's a second question. Does that answer your question? Okay. Councillor Grove.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't go back on what I was telling people through the campaign, and I can't go back on what I felt when I first heard that this 85% increase was being presented by the previous council. I was surprised. I had declared when whatever we're making right now happened. I felt very much like there was a public service element to what I was choosing to do. However, this has been brought up. Many people who have said to me, you guys deserve more, the work you do, the responsibility, the scope, the size of the job, the intensity, the hours, the whole caboodle. And yes, it is a big job. However, the public service element is still there. I was happy to work with it. The 85%, I had a hard time with it. I know many people who are not getting more than a 5%, 2% increase this year. It just seemed, it was just over the top to me. So I thought about that. 16.5, that's what I can make. If I'm making 30 hours a week, even if I can keep it to that, it's barely minimum wage. Fine. So let's say 20,000 a year. What would that mean? Okay, I thought about it, 22, but 30,000, it just seemed to be too much. Mayor proposed an option. I thought, well, what else are we going to do? We're going to go forward. A lot of people have said it's too much. I can't go back. I'm still saying it's too much. So I'm going to support the original motion, if that's the one we're talking about. It is. Then I will support the original motion, and because of that, it needs to move forward. I'm really looking forward to see the result. I hope to God it's timely and we don't have to wait the almost 90 days perhaps. And let's hope it comes back quick and we can get it done. And I'm not going to promise I'm going to accept anything without kicking and screaming, because if they come back at 40,000 a year, what am I supposed to do with that? So I would just say right now, from the bottom of my heart, I want to get this done, and I'm going to work for cheap because that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Grove. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tough act to follow as always. I just going back to Councillor Jansen's comment regarding the committee, I just wanted on record that I don't think sending this back is in any way condemnation of the committee or the work that they've done. More so, I think it's reflective of the missing information. Comment was made about how hard the previous mayor worked, and some of that was certainly on behalf of the CRD. But that compensation wasn't factored into this report, and it's significant. And for me, I think when you're missing information, you can't make an informed decision. So, full transparency, I campaigned on it as well, that if I was elected, I went into it with my eyes wide open, that I'd be working at a low hourly rate that I haven't seen in many, many years. But, I firmly support having an expert look at it and looking at the numbers. And, quite frankly, if it came back the same or higher, I would look people in the eye and say, well, we did it right. What do you want me to do? I'm not advocating for less money. I'm not advocating for more money. I just want to be able to say an expert made this decision based on all the information. That was my commitment to the taxpayer. And, that's something that, I firmly believe in, and I'm prepared to stand by. So I will continue to support the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ward. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I hope you'll forgive me. It seems like I've been talking a lot on this one. I've just been trying to answer questions. I just want to say, I want it to be on the record that my big issue was not so much about the money, but the way it was laid out, what it was based on. The idea of tying remuneration to development was really a big issue for me. The job is the job, whether the development happens or it doesn't happen. We're here to represent the people of Colwood and ensure that there's open and transparent governance. I know that's was a focus during the last term to really try to move the needle on pushing Colwood forward. And I appreciate the many things that came with that. But I don't think that would be a good way to set us up for the future, because that can stop at any time. There's a lot of outside signals and sources, and good governance isn't dependent on development. It's dependent on people being engaged and your community having the resources to engage with you. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Mr. Chair, I can see that my motion perhaps, my suggested amendment is creating some confusion, but I think I've got my point across, and I'll withdraw that amendment at this point in time, just to keep it nice and clean. To be absolutely fair, Councillor Grove, a 3% increase on a real income is what you might expect when you make a real income. The 85% or whatever it was, or 80% on, I knocked on a door and one of our residents, the quote was, you make less than peanuts. So 85% increase on peanuts, I would suggest, is not, at the time, and looking at the numbers, it wasn't unreasonable. It wasn't an unreasonable ask. To be full and frank, I supported it all the way through because I see the value in properly compensating the people at this table, and also leaving this table better than the way I found it when I came here for those that come behind me. I've made statements that again, it's not about me. It's probably not going to do much for me personally or my household. I am going to support your suggested motion as it reads. I do believe there's some value in this, and I concur with many of the comments that have been said, but I will be looking for the result. I will be taking a decision and hoping that we can finalize this discussion and put it to bed when that comes back, and hopefully, in this calendar year-ish. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jensen. So not seeing any other hands here, I will call the question. All those in favor of the motion? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to 8.2, it's another one of my motions, and that's for the Heritage Commission and Emergency Planning Committee Council member appointments. These ones, just so to clarify to everyone, these are required by bylaw. So I have to, they're sort of not in all in sequence. The biggest things are the advisory and the standing committees, which you're all going to see hopefully by the end of this week, and I'll let you guys fill your names in. But my recommendation is that Councillor Dean Jensen be appointed to the Emergency Planning Committee, and that Councillor Kim Jordison be appointed as alternate, and that Councillor Misty Olson be appointed to as representative to the Heritage Commission, and that Councillor David Grove be appointed as alternate. And I'll go ahead and make the motion. Is there a seconder? Councillor Day, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Any opposed to these appointments? Seeing none, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. 8.3, I'll ask Rick Smith, our Senior Bylaw Officer, to step forward to the mic and tell us all about an unsightly premise. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Rick Smith, Senior Officer. I haven't met everyone here, so welcome to Colwood. So just a quick briefing on this property. On September 27th of this year, bylaw enforcement received a complaint about 3244 Wishart Road. After that complaint, a property inspection commenced, and it was determined throughout the property, as you can see in the photos in front of you, there was miscellaneous debris throughout the whole property. On October 4th, which was the deadline that the homeowner picked for compliance, another property inspection took place. The property was still looking like the photos. So a fine was issued at that time. Moving forward, that fine still has not been paid, and the homeowner was advised that this would be going to council tonight, and he was also invited to the meeting, and I do not see him here tonight. So back a little bit of a background on this property. It's a new homeowner. He's owned it probably since February of this year, and this is the third property complaint for unsightly premise that we've had. Back then, he's always sort of brought it into compliance, and then it would slip off the charts again. This is the worst I've seen this property since dealing with this. The options for council to consider are to direct the property owner under the unsightly premise bylaw to clean up the property and giving them 14 days to do so. After that 14 days, if the property is not brought into compliance by him cleaning it up, that allows the city or our agents to go onto the property, clean the property up, and that money that costs the city or our agents gets billed to him on his property taxes if unpaid before December 31st of this year. The second option is to direct bylaw enforcement to take no further action on the property. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Oh, Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. This residence has been a challenge for some time. And so I applaud the efforts of staff. Just a couple of questions, please. Firstly, is our bylaw provide the mechanism for our staff to go on the property and do the work, or our contractor?
Under the bylaw and the community charter, it allows the city or agents that we hire to contract out, allow them onto the property, yes. And put that cost on the property taxes.
And there's no need for lawyers and injunctions, et cetera, et cetera.
No, not at all.
That's music to my ears. Thank you. And I would be supportive. I'll put forward I'll move option 1 just to get the discussion rolling, Your Worship. Thank you.
Seconder, Councillor Ward. And Councillor Day, discussion. Oops, sorry.
There we go. I've been to sessions with VHA discussing issues similar to this. So is there a mental health component here?
Not that I'm aware of. And also the homeowner was offered by us if we could get him any assistance, being a local church or youth groups to come in and help him. Everything was declined by the homeowner.
Okay. Because just for everyone's benefit, there's a real lack of resources for people who have mental health issues where this may become part of the things that make their mental health issues more obvious. And supports can be difficult to find. So just something to be aware of. Not every person who has a messy backyard is maybe capable of dealing with that situation without some assistance. And there aren't very many programs available other than, as the senior bylaw officer explained, local helping organizations, churches, or others who would offer to come and help. So it's just something to keep on your radar, that there's very definitely big issues in some households in Colwood where they may need a little extra help.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Ward?
I think Councillor Day covered my primary concern, which was that there could be a mental health issue there, and I wondered what resources were in place to have someone accompany, either Colwood bylaw or contractors to the site. And secondly, along with that was the safety element. Councillor Jansen mentioned, lawyers and litigation, and my concern is that something could occur that is unforeseen and that it escalates. And I just wonder if there's any accommodations made for that or any perceived need for that.
Through the chair. If we're going to a property like this for cleanup, it's always supervised by a bylaw officer. So the cleanup people, whether it be our city staff or the contract agents, we're there to support them in any way.
Councillor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might have 2 questions. Is this property currently occupied by the homeowner or tenants?
Through the chair, it's occupied by the homeowner.
It is occupied by
Yes,
the
it is.
homeowner. Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions, I just want to thank you, Mr. Smith. I mean, your job is a tough job and I don't envy you. It's a tough job and I see how you guys handle situations throughout the city. And I think what you guys do is just outstanding work. And I just wanted to give a shout out to you and the other bylaw officers. It's a tough job and I'd never, ever want to do the job. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I'll call the question. So the recommendation is for the first recommendation that pursuant to the unsightly premises bylaw number 715, 2003, the owners of 3244 Wishart Road be directed to remove the cardboard boxes, old newspapers, plastic containers, garbage, and miscellaneous debris from the premises within 14 days after delivery of a notification letter. So all those that are in favor? And it's unanimous. Thank you very much. 8.4, Scott Abramson, the Assistant Fire Chief. Scotty, you're on deck. You're on.
That might help. Good evening, your worship and fellow councillors. My name is Scott Abrahamson. If I haven't met you, I'm an assistant fire chief with the fire department. And tonight I'm here to introduce a report that's seeking council approval for the creation of a combined Colwood and View Royal emergency radio communications team. It's being recommended that council approve this merger under the leadership of one emergency radio coordinator. To provide you some background on this topic, I think it's important to identify that Colwood and View Royal have worked very closely together in emergency services for many, many years. This is through fire department mutual aid and auto aid agreements, combined emergency support services teams, and shared emergency reception centers in both communities. This is a relationship that's dated back well into the early 2000s. While each municipality will operate its own emergency program independently, there are benefits of shared services. These are increased and effective communication, coordinated planning, elimination of duplication, and pooled resources. Colwood's emergency radio communications team has been in operation in its own entity for many years up until COVID started. Challenges for the team began with the closure of City Hall, and this ran from early 2021 and well into 2022. The radio team's activity dwindled. Some of the members had a reduced interest in volunteering, and the previous leadership unfortunately stepped down. Colwood's emergency program was without a backup communication option. In early to mid 2022, talks began between Colwood and View Royal's emergency managers, which led to the idea of having the combining of the two radio teams. View Royal had strong leadership and a well-developed program, and the remaining of the Colwood members that wanted to volunteer and continue were only going to do so under strong leadership. The idea grew, and in July 2022, the teams began to work together for a trial period. This proved to be extremely successful. The Colwood team began to excel. Colwood's team has been rejuvenated, and the Colwood emergency radio participation is back to a functional level. Under the combined Colwood View Royal model, the volunteers are not just considered emergency radio operators. They receive additional training, and they're considered an overall emergency volunteer with a radio specialty. This means they can assist in an emergency, either with the emergency support services team, or they could help staff a reception center when the traditional communications aren't compromised and their services and specialties are not required. Historically, Colwood's leader was provided a $1,000 annual stipend. They performed multiple tasks, which led them to become overwhelmed, and ultimately they stepped down. There were no other formal support positions in Colwood. The reporting structure for the View Royal team is slightly different under their leadership. This includes an overall leader, the emergency radio coordinator, being compensated at $1,500 per year, and a manager for each of their radio base stations with a compensation of $1,000 each per year. Under this model, the financial increase for Colwood would be an increase of 2 stipend positions, one for each radio base station at $1,000 per year, and an increase of $500 to the historic stipend of $1,000, which would lead to the emergency radio leader getting a $1,500 stipend. Therefore, to move this combined radio team forward, we will need an additional $2,500 annually. And the agreement that's been set out in this proposal is a 5-year agreement, and it will consist of Colwood transferring $4,500 annually to View Royal to cover the cost of the program. This includes the $2,500 for additional and increased stipends, and the original $2,000 that was used for the equipment, supplies, and historic annual leadership stipend. The additional cost for this program will be covered under the existing emergency program budget. I'd like to thank you for your time and consideration with this recommendation, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Scotty. Councilor Day. John.
There we go. I'd like to move the recommendation. And I'd just like to add a comment afterwards, but do you want to have a seconder first?
Councillor Grove seconds it. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so what I think is really wonderful about this is the fact that you are making our radio communications team an emergency management team member. So that's a really good start. And I love that we are working with View Royal. I have had some experience working with our emergency management, did some training, did some learning. And it was very clear to me from doing that work that when we're faced with an emergency, it's way better to handle that with a team that's already familiar with working together and has a good training base. So I think this is a step up for Colwood, and it's unfortunate that the previous coordinator left, but honestly, they'd already been volunteering for more than 20 years with the city, so they probably deserved a rest. So thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Councillor Jordison.
I just wanted to say that in my short time on council, I guess I just wanted to say that I applaud the efforts of the Colwood Fire Department and always looking for ways to save not only financially, but to share partnerships and building relationships with other municipalities. It's just great to see. So thank you.
Here, here. Thanks a lot, Scotty. I'll call the question. I'm not seeing any others. All those in favor of the motion? It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Byron, over to you.
Good evening, council. Excuse me, for those of you that I haven't met yet, my name is Byron Grant, Manager of Building and Bylaw here in Colwood. We also have Nels Antonson joining us virtually, who's a building performance engineer with Analytics. He did our study of how these changes would affect a typical new house we see here in Colwood. He may be able to answer more technical questions that come up. We are here tonight to discuss the BC Energy Step Code and the next steps Colwood can take to reduce carbon emissions in new construction. This evening, we'll refresh our memories on what the purpose of Step Code is, where Colwood is at now with implementation, and what Colwood can do to accelerate reducing carbon emissions in new construction. I'll go through the presentation and then we'll have an opportunity at the end for questions. My memory is not that good, so I'll have to use speaking notes this evening. So, without further ado. So, by now, most of you are probably aware of what the BC Energy Step Code is. For a refresher, though, Step Code is an optional compliance path in the BC Building Code that local governments may use if they wish to incentivize or require a level of energy efficiency in new construction that goes above and beyond the requirements of the BC Building Code. Builders may voluntarily use the BC Energy Step Code as a new compliance path for meeting the energy efficiency requirements of the BC Building Code. I don't have to say next slide, please. So, for Part 9 homes and buildings, the BC Energy Step Code sets 5 performance levels or steps that exceed the prescriptive requirements of the base BC Building Code, with the higher steps being more efficient. The benefits include reducing carbon emissions, better long-term affordability with lower energy costs, increased comfort with the ability to maintain a more even temperature throughout the house, better health through refreshing indoor air, and improve durability as buildings are less prone to moisture and condensation issues that can lead to deterioration of the building envelope. So by now, many communities across the province have adopted STEP code. A draft building code change has been circulated, and it's likely STEP code will be mandatory for new construction across BC in 2023. It will likely be step 3 for a single family dwelling, which Colwood is at currently. This will mean the province has met its goal for buildings to be 20% more energy efficient than the prescriptive requirements of the building code, which you can see on the graph. As part of the city's climate emergency response in 2019, council endorsed accelerated actions, including implementation of the STEP code. On November 12th, 2019, a staff report was offered outlining the implementation, consultation, and anticipated timelines for BC Energy STEP code in the city of Colwood. On September 27th, 2021, the city of Colwood adopted the BC Energy STEP code, and the building permit applications received on or after December 1st, 2021 were subject to its requirements. Currently, Part 9 buildings, which include single-family dwellings, duplexes, and townhouses, for example, must meet Step 3. Part 3 buildings that are wood-framed residential must also meet Step 3, and other Part 3 buildings, such as offices, must meet Step 2. The city of Colwood is one of 517 municipalities in Canada and over 2,000 worldwide to have declared a climate emergency. Therefore, the city is developing a low carbon resilience climate action plan. The LCR plan is our pathway towards preparing for and managing the impacts of a changing climate, while also reducing our contributions to greenhouse gas emissions that cause climate change. An important component of this initiative is highlighting what our community can do with new buildings now to further reduce our carbon footprint. The city has taken important steps so far by implementing STEP code. At the meeting on June 27, 2022, Colwood City Council directed city staff to include options in Colwood's low carbon resiliency plan for acquiring higher BC Energy STEP code levels for buildings which use fossil fuel energy systems, and lower STEP code level for buildings that are all electric and use heat pumps for heating and cooling. This is referred to as a step up, step down incentive approach, as opposed to a technical building requirement. Staff recommend a similar move the council can make to accelerate reducing carbon emissions in new construction by giving builders the option to build to a higher step or a lower one with a cap on emissions. This would not require buildings to be all electric initially, but would be a significant step in the direction council seeks to reduce GHG emissions. So you may be familiar with the Clean BC initiative the province has taken by this point. As a refresher, the Clean BC plan was developed as a pathway to achieve the province's legislated climate targets of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by the year 2030, based on 2007 levels. The province has used terms as opposed to numbers to decipher between STEP code timeline and reducing carbon emissions timeline. The targets and timelines are illustrated on this slide for reducing carbon emissions in buildings. Energy modeling with STEP code already includes a greenhouse gas analysis. By 2024, buildings may be provincially required to meet medium carbon emissions, which means you're decarbonizing space heat. By 2027, buildings may need to meet low carbon emissions, which means decarbonizing both space heat and hot water in most cases. And in 2030, zero carbon, which means that buildings are fully decarbonized. The term zero carbon is thrown around a little bit, but zero carbon ready seems to be a more accurate term. Municipalities such as Saanich and Victoria have opted for a technical requirement for carbon emissions that will likely be possible with an upcoming building code change. Excuse me. This change would allow local governments to create a technical requirement for reducing carbon emissions and adopt one of the standards that you see in front of you. As of now, the Building Act prevents local governments from doing so, And recently, staff caught wind that this code change has been further delayed. Staff feel the step up, step down approach as presented in this report gives the builder the flexibility to choose a path that achieves a similar outcome. Generally, this approach was better received when staff reached out to our stakeholders in the construction industry. Locally, the District of Highlands has chosen the same optional step up, step down approach. The timeline that was presented harmonizes with the other larger local municipalities such as Saanich and Victoria, making similar moves. So to get a firm understanding of the impact of what is proposed, staff worked with Enerlytics to do an energy model on a typical house that we see here in Colwood. An energy advisor models the energy efficiency of a building to meet BC Energy step code, such as insulation requirements, but also calculates the carbon emissions. It is important to note that this study is not a one size fits all. The house versions with a basement and walkout basement that were modeled are an example of the most common ones we see in Colwood that are standard sizes with standard finishes. The more complex the house gets with the desire for larger spaces, taller walls, more windows, it is safe to assume this move would have more of an impact on construction assemblies and cost. One of the main factors to consider when doing the energy model of a building is the orientation, which direction it's facing. For this study, the worst case scenario is used, and it would be easier to achieve the step code level and GHG emission targets with other orientations. In the study that was done, it is not possible to use a gas furnace for a space heating in a step 3 house with a low carbon energy system. It was not possible to use a gas furnace in the basement example for step 5, but it was possible in the walkout, for example, if the builder went with exterior insulation and triple glazed windows. Staff feel it is unlikely a contractor would opt for exterior insulation and triple glazed windows to use a gas space heating system over an electric one to meet step 5. In conclusion, on a typical house we see in Colwood, there were no differences in construction assembly, if the designer simply went for an electric heating system such as a heat pump. Space heating is one of the largest contributors to carbon emissions in buildings and seems a reasonable first move for council to consider. So the options for council to consider are outlined in this slide for timeline, step options, and metrics for carbon emissions. As mentioned previously, the recommended timeline is the same as Victoria and Saanich, with the first move for Part 9 buildings in the summer of 2023, followed by Part 3 buildings in the summer of 2024. Staff recommend a metric of 3 kilograms of CO2 per meter squared per year, as the same metric used by others who have gone with the step up, step down approach, such as District of Highlands, West Vancouver, City of North Vancouver, District of North Vancouver, City of New Westminster, and City of Richmond. Alternatively, council could choose a metric that is higher or lower than what is recommended. The low carbon technical requirement Saanich and Victoria have opted for works out to be 2.5 kilograms of CO2 per meter squared per year. It is important for council to note that they are not passing a bylaw this evening. We are seeking direction to proceed with the work in creating a bylaw and would return at a later date with bylaw readings. At that time, there would be another opportunity for questions council may have that we're unable to answer tonight, or gather any additional information that is desired. So that concludes my presentation tonight. Myself and Nels are happy to provide clarity or answer questions you may have. And we can go back to the last slide for council to see options again, if you want. Maybe.
Yeah, it's on our sheets here. Yeah. Does anybody need it up? No, we're good. Any questions for Byron? Oh, Councillor Jensen, then followed by Councillor Day.
Thank you, Byron. This is exciting. And a couple of thoughts. how do these changes service someone that lives up the road and has an 80s bungalow that they wish to renovate? They come to the counter seeking permits. What impact does it have on those members of our community?
Chair, if I may.
Please.
As of now, this first move is new construction. So right now, our province, who creates the building code and shapes it to a certain extent, they're creating what's called a retrofit code, which we'll be able to use for existing homes. And I noticed on our website recently, we put a link to a group. I don't recall off the top of my head what it is, but we're definitely wanting to point people in the right direction and following that very closely.
Okay, so that's great, because I'd hate to think that we would in some way inhibit someone from refurbishing or redoing their home. But I take it, I mean, there are options for people who are renovating that are along these same guidelines, and we would help educate our community as far as suggestions on retrofits and upgrades and what have you.
Absolutely. I mean, right now, definitely the low hanging fruit is new construction to standardize, and then the much bigger nut to crack is existing homes. But I was glad to hear that they're actually creating a part of the building code for that. And our friendly staff are happy to help guide people to improve what they have now.
You're right, because I don't think we could expect them to lift and turn their home for the appropriate orientation. That's great. Anything on additional costing estimates? And I know we've been around the horn on this, and I know it's difficult, and we did hear from a member of the building community, but do we have any wild ass guesses as far as what these requirements would impose as far as increases on a builder?
Thank you for the question through the chair. The study that we did was on a typical house that we see in Colwood. So, it's safe to assume that if you are going for, a lot of windows, tall walls, it will mean, likely exterior insulation, more expensive windows. We wanted to base the study off one that we would typically see. And that study did show that there were no differences to the construction assemblies themselves.
Thank you.
If you went with a low carbon energy system.
Perfect. That's a great segue. So parse out for me in simplistic terms, step 4 versus step 3 plus the LCES. What does that look like in practical terms?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the low carbon energy system, it's easy to look at it as a cap. There's a limit on how much carbon your operational systems can emit. And it's important to note that, and this comes directly from the province, that moves such as this limit the emissions from the operating systems in a building, not the energy sources, which have been quite a topic this evening. So this approach that we're taking, we feel allows for that flexibility. And reaching out to the province, they're actually developing a rule set and an actual guideline for possibly using renewable natural gas and factoring it in. But essentially, this is saying that if a house emits this much carbon, this is a good step to take out one of the larger contributors, which is the space heating. If that answers the question.
Somewhat. And I see as far as the commercial builds, am I reading this right, that we have lesser expectations in this regard from new commercial construction than we would for residential?
I don't understand the question completely.
Well, I'm reading here, it says part 3 commercial, step 3 or step 2 plus LCS, yet we expect step 4 or step 3 with the LCS for residential. Can we explain the intent there? Like, should we not have, I guess the philosophical question for us is, should we not have similar expectations for our commercial builders?
I think I understand the question now. So with step levels, it's really confusing hearing part this building and step that. With step levels, there's 5 in part 9, which includes houses, and then there's 4 with part 3 buildings. So the highest step you can achieve in a part 3 building is step 4. So it's following that incremental amount, and you'll see, well, I don't have the slide up anymore, but on that slide, it illustrates the difference between part 3 and part 9 buildings, that there's less steps with part 3 buildings.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It's not us, it's the STEP guidelines that provide this framework for a commercial build. So let me finish by this, because I'm sure there's lots of others that want to speak to this. What is the risk if we want to be bold and accelerate our timeline on this, and say I put my hand up and I suggest we should go with option 3? What's the risk to us as a community?
I believe option 3 would achieve relatively the same things as the first 2, just without the carbon emissions component.
Okay, so is there a difference? Is it better? Is it newer, faster, stronger? Is it?
I won't say it's better. I'll say that if council wants to accelerate their action on carbon emissions, there's essentially 2 ways of doing so. You can create, likely with a code change coming up, a technical requirement for a cap on major space heating equipment, hot water heating equipment, or you can do what we're doing, where you have to achieve higher energy efficiency or a lower step with this low carbon energy system, which essentially, through our research, meets the same intent.
Okay.
If that answers the question.
It's apples and apples and the step 3 plus the LCES, or is this providing some kind of, is this increased flexibility for a builder? It's this or that, and it achieves the same outcome, or is one preferable than the other for us as a community or decision makers?
Yeah, definitely dealt with, some competing needs with this topic. And this was the better received option, where, we're not specifically saying that you have to have cut out this system or that system. We're just saying that you have a cap. So when you have an energy modeler doing a design on their house, they have certain parameters to work with. So speaking with all of our large stakeholders, they know that this is coming and seem to appreciate the flexibility in the optional approach.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. So I like what's being presented, and I do know that builders are, some of them are somewhat reticent because they have a building technique that they've perfected over however many years. And like all of us, we're all, at least I count myself a donkey. I hate change. I like to do what I did before. But we really, as a community, I think, need to step up and try to address climate change sooner. So when I'm looking at this graph of potential changes, which are coming no matter what we do, like if we bring this in 2023, whether it's option 1 or option 2, the province is clearly on a path to bring those same regulations into the building code. So the question is, do we do it this year, next year, or the year after? Whatever way you slice it, it's coming. Is that correct?
Yeah, thank you for the question through the chair. You explained it better than I did there, actually. So yeah, it is safe to say that there already is a tentative timeline in place for these moves. And this isn't what staff feels the best option to accelerate it if council chooses.
So I'll just add that from my perspective, I've tried very hard to learn about this. I've attended the CRD's step code tours of local homes that have achieved carbon neutrality, and met with the builders to say what makes this work. I've met with our builders in Royal Bay to say, so what aren't you doing yet in your home building? And they've been pretty clear with me. They're on the path to this code, and they're certainly getting there. But there is a lot of small technical details that make a big difference in terms of how you do the things that need to be done. So if you do a really good job of sealing your house, then you're going to have less air leakage. Then you're going to capture more of your heat back through your heat exchanger. It's going to cost the residents less to live there. But in that whole overall calculation, if you decide you want 9-foot ceilings or 12-foot ceilings or whatever you do, those are going to cost more to heat because your room is now bigger. So you may have to compensate somehow by having more insulation, or like you said in your report, the triple glazed windows and the housing orientation. Taking it to the full extreme, then you're talking about passive homes who are able to hold almost all of the heat that they put into a house stays in the house. And those have a whole nother set of requirements. But when I look at the timeline that the province is using and the timeline that we're using, we're talking about a fairly short time between now and 2030. So that's 8 years to get to this step where we are at the top tier of this step code. And that I've noticed, because I've been here for way too long, that houses that were built when my house was built in 1974, worst possible year. Lots of things, 2x4 construction. When you buy a house that was built in 1986, you get 2x6 construction. So you could fit way more insulation in your walls. There's all these good things that come with these improvements over time. So I'm asking myself, what do the residents of Colwood want in 2035? Do they want the house that was built in 2023 that's lower on the step code and is less efficient and has less insulation configured into it? Or do they want the house that was built in 2030 because it really is more cost effective to run and contributes less to climate change? I think they want the 2030 house. So I also don't want to terrify all of our builders that I'm going to ask them to achieve something that's unachievable. But all of my research so far says it is achievable, but there probably is a learning curve, and there's lots of things that are in the way of builders. But I think we want to aspire to option 2, where we're getting to a residential home at step 5. So it is the most efficient that it can be. And we're also offering that if they want to use a low carbon energy system to heat the home, then we'll let them do step 3, because we know that it's contributing less to climate change. So from my perspective, I think that option 2 is doable. I don't think it's going to cause builders to be unable to build in Colwood. And I also don't think, I think that it will give us a community in 2030 or 2035 of homes where more homes are the way people would want them to be, and we will be a desirable community, even if you're buying not a brand new home at that point in time. So that's my theory that I will put out there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Day.
Councillor Grove. Here we go. Through the chair, I would like to ask about, well, first of all, I'd like to say I would support option one for sure. I think that sounds easy. We had a builder tonight speak to us, Mike Bernhardt, I believe, explaining that we're basically there already. Option two, sure, but I think for me, I want to understand we need to move forward quickly. The province's targets seem to be close, but I think the sooner the better, the faster the better. We don't have time to wait. That was brought up quite a bit earlier on by various people and who spoke well. I do have a comment about step 5. There's less heat and AC needed. Is that right? Therefore, it's cost less to build. Perhaps that's a question for a builder. But there was that comment about step 5 house was less expensive.
Through the chair. Sorry, Councillor Grove, would you please repeat the question again?
The question about step 5, is it indeed cheaper to build a step code 5 house? And is that perhaps because there is less heat and AC needed? Is there some component I'm missing? I don't understand how that's possible, but I mean, it's exciting, but.
The fellow is sitting about 15 feet behind me, but I imagine what he was speaking to would have been, you know, one of the larger parts would have been the energy savings over time as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that answers the
Okay,
question.
and so it is a smaller house, let's say a 1,200 square foot house, which is quite a bit bigger than the one I grew up in with the 4 of us in Toronto. Is that by its very nature, higher step code house, or is it a relative?
Nels, are you online right now? There he is. I'll let Nels.
I am. They're great questions. So to your first question, Councillor Grove, you can make the difference 2 ways. You can put in a more efficient heating system. So you can get to step 5 with a heat pump. So that really doesn't change the insulation level. You're just getting your space heating much more efficiently because you're basically taking free energy from the environment. And I mean, an interesting discussion is it really free? But we account for it free from the environment. So that is one way of achieving step 5. The other way of achieving step 5 is moving along towards, but not necessarily having to go all the way to the passive house approach, which is really the enclosure or the walls, the envelope, as it's called. So you can super insulate and then you don't need a lot of space heat to do that. So you can get away with electric baseboards, you can get away with natural gas. In this whole debate, though, there is also the low carbon energy. And so if you can get to the higher steps with natural gas, but if the emphasis is on low carbon, then using natural gas bumps your carbon by 2 to 3 times what you would use for electric. Does that answer your questions? Oh, the smaller house. That's a complicated one. Things certainly change with size. The ratio of wall area to floor area. Most of these metrics are for step code are per floor area, per unit floor area. And so, you know, a rancher is different than a 2-level house, for example, in townhomes.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. I did want to ask about R2000 program. I remember working in construction in 1979, and my builder, the builder I worked for, qualified as an R2000 builder. I think the 2000 was referenced to the year 2000, which we passed just a little bit ago. And here we are talking about compliance. So I'm wondering to passive housing standards. I think 50 years on now, we've got the technology, it's improved a great deal. Am I in the right thinking to talk that way? I don't mean to sound disrespectful to anything or any system, but I guess the question has got to do with R2000 and what does that mean? Is that program still around? Is there anything like it, I mean?
It is. May I?
Yes, please. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Thank you. It is still around. Step Code is passing R2000. R2000 really was the first program to ask for heat recovery ventilators and had a lot to do with air quality in the homes, which was poor at the time. And it was also energy efficiency, but we're passing R2000 by. There's very little call for it.
Right, good. I live in a 1959 home, built home, and we did big renovation 10, 12 years ago, and we made the walls thicker and put more insulation, new windows, and electrified everything and so on. It's very clean, it's inexpensive. I have solar panels that generate half my power bill and my electric cars, and this is all going in the right direction. So of course, I'm the kind of person who would say, push it to the limit, do it now, don't wait. I've had this house, it was done 12 years ago. I'm not sure what the step code is on it, but be an interesting thing to find out, I guess. Anyway, I would support the option recommended, or option 2 for that matter. I would almost prefer it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Grove. So I just have one simple question. And like I said, we always get these letters from all different places. And the latest one I read, and I'm just trying to recall, it had to do with air circulation or, you know, a step code 5 house, and then radon. What's that all about? I couldn't figure what that was about, to tell you the truth. I mean, is it a true hazard and risk, or is it just, what is it? What exactly, can you explain that to us?
I'd be happy to, yeah. I came prepared for it. So although we have some new council members, some may recall when this topic was discussed before when step code was initially implemented in Colwood. In my professional opinion, there is no correlation between step code and radon gas requirements in the BC building code. The concern is that buildings are built too airtight, in turn trapping harmful soil gases. It is important to note that the building code requires a continuous air barrier between the ground and the conditioned part of the house, along with fresh air being constantly circulated with mechanical systems. Although radon levels exist almost everywhere, the BC Building Code has determined Colwood does not have high enough levels to require a soil gas depressurization system, in addition to the above mentioned air barrier that is required in all situations.
So someone's actually came in, for example, in our newest developments, actually gone down to the gravel pit and tested it and said, you're okay, right? I just want to confirm that.
I wouldn't say that it's that general. I would say that, you know, there are certain areas within BC where, generally speaking, you know, Colwood, for example, was not at a high enough level to require an actual depressurization system. I actually take quite a bit of interest in this topic. And my house, for example, you know, the crawl space ground seal, the cover, the concrete, isn't up to code these days, but the rest of the house is. And so I take my radon sniffer down in the crawl space, and it actually does note, you know, register at levels which, you know, would make you consider it. When you go above to a modern ventilated house, it's a negligible reading in that case, because there's always fresh air being added and exhausted out of the house. And then, as I mentioned earlier, with a new house, you're required to have, when I say air barrier, a layer of plastic underneath the concrete that's sealed at all the edges. So there is no direct connection between the ground and the house.
Thank you very much. Someone like to make a motion then? Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'd like to move option 2.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Grove seconds it. Discussion.
Oh, I think I just left my mic on.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. I guilt you. I made you feel guilty, Councillor Ward. Councillor Ward.
I hate to be, you know, the guy that plays devil's advocate, because I think I'm a firm believer in that we have to take action. You know, regardless, it's a global issue, but we've got to act locally. But costs are something that I think we have to consider. We're being beaten over the head with this sort of self-manufactured housing crisis right now, and affordability issues. And I say self-manufactured because layers of government approvals and things are in large part to blame for where we find ourselves. And the solution seems to be, we'll build our way out of it, but building $1 million townhomes doesn't solve the affordability issue. And my only concern here is that, you know, you move really quickly, or really take the lead, to be honest with you, which sounds great in principle, but you know, sometimes being an early adopter isn't all it's cracked up to be. And you know, I just posed that question, and mainly because, you know, we've got a letter, for example, I think from Greater Victoria Housing, who says, you know, moving to step 4 for them kills their project at Belmont, for example. So this is not a comment against the motion per se. It's more of just you know, we need to take that into consideration. I think I don't believe Colwood has to be the end all for everyone that wants to build. I think you know, there's a lot of pressure on a lot of municipalities to increase their housing and increase density, and you know, frankly, I've been vocal against that in some cases. I hate seeing, you know, mountains denuded and trees taken down, but I do just want to be cognizant of what the financial impact would be. You know, just not so much on the development industry, but on them, in the sense that, can they still deliver you know, affordable housing for people that really need it? I'll be taking my soapbox moment here, but I don't really care about the folks coming from Toronto or Vancouver or from overseas that want a beautiful ocean view home in Colwood. I'm more concerned about my son and children going to Royal Bay and other places that, you know, will want to stay in their community, the seniors that want to age in place. And are we going to have a negative impact on that if we move too far too soon? So my preference in the recommendation from city staff was option 1. I think that's where I sit. But again, not because I don't believe that option 2 or other actions are the right ones, but I'm just looking to find a balance in a time when everything is increasingly expensive. So that's my 50 cents.
Thank you very much, Councilor Ward. Councilor Grove.
Just like to point out the differences I see it between 1 and 2 is simply the step code 3 plus LCES looks identical. Other than that, the step code 5 is in there in the part 9. They look the same to me. The option to the builder is step 3 plus LCES. Sounds like that's what we're
Low carbon
being,
energy system.
which is, I think, what was being built now. Option 2, it says step code 5 or step 3 plus LCES. Is there any difference? If you pick the option for the heat pump, it's this, those 2 options are the same. Am I missing something here?
Sure, if I may. Yeah, the only subtle difference in between option 1 and 2 is the builder would have to choose between a step 5 option or a step 3 with low carbon energy systems, or a step 4 being option 2 or a step 3 with low carbon energy systems. So perhaps it would incentivize a builder to go with the low carbon energy system approach more, if
Thank
council
you.
chose that.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's what I see here is a stronger incentive in option 2, not a more onerous option. Just a more appealing option to use the heat pump, perhaps.
Great, thank you. Councilor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your comments, Councilor Ward. I appreciate some of your candor, and I too have some concerns. However, I preface that as far as the $1 million townhomes go, it is what they're costing. And so say, you know, if heat pump adds 10% to the cost or whatever, I mean, it's not doom and gloom for the developer, because that's not coming from the developer's back pocket. It's coming from the consumer's back pocket. And as a wise gentleman that used to sit right in this very chair before me, used to say, the higher the step code, the more efficient, the less cost. And former Councillor Baxter was quite adamant that you do see a result in the end with the higher step code for the consumer who purchases the home, lives in it over a period of time, that they will recover their costs. So I think the risk is somewhat minimal. I think that it's inconceivable that construction is going to stop. So having a better quality product, as Councillor Day alludes to, I think is a move in the right direction. And I will support your motion. Thank you so much.
I think everyone has spoken. I just want to throw my comments in it. I'm torn between option 1 and 2. It's just, I guess, where I am with option 2. Like I heard the one gentleman tonight who spoke very eloquently about the cost, and it was very interesting. I took great interest in your words of wisdom there, but it's anecdotal to me at this point in time. And I know you've done an analysis right now, Byron, and it went again. This is this contradicting data right now, because we got that other letter from, was it UDI or yeah, and then and they said something contrary to this. I mean, they said they had big numbers, and to me, as I put myself in my daughter's place, who's 37 years old, trying to get into this market right now. You know, if you're adding $30,000 to a home, well, that's a different. She can't get into the home now because she doesn't have that down payment now. You know, she's collected the down payment. Not that I'm saying she has it right now, but you know, that just added another $30,000 according, or $40,000 according to his analysis. And this is what's so confusing to me right now. Like, what's right? Like, is there a standard? Is there something out there that's right, so that you always want to make a good decision based on, you know, good data, proper information. And I don't know what to believe. And that's why I'm sort of torn between option 1 and option 2. Love to be bold, but if it means that we've just wiped out another 10% of the population to be able to afford to buy a house because of a decision that we've made here, because we all feel good about it. And there is a climate emergency, yes, but I still look at the other half of the homes, 60% of the homes in Colwood, which are far from being step code 1. And this is where I'm troubled right now. And I don't even know what's going to happen next year. You know, or should we be looking at, you know, should we just delay this a little bit just to see if we get the home sold right now, we get the building permits for next year, or you know, how should we be doing this? What is the right way to do this? Because remember, any decision we make, that's long term. And so I'm torn between being bold, visionary, you know, and being a climate leader, and being practical from an affordability point of view, because we're certainly getting hammered on that. So I guess that's where I am right now. It's so hard for me, because whose data is right? Is that I never got a report back, or maybe I should be asking for this, because we got that UDI. I mean, where did that number come from? It just seems like it's so far out compared to what everyone else or some other people are saying. So I don't know if you can answer that question. I mean, are they that far out in their analysis, or?
I don't recall the specific part of the letter you're speaking about with UDI. I do know that they endorsed the first move as far as the LCS option goes, with the lower step and the higher step and that was more relative to Part 9 buildings, but I don't recall what the other comments were in regards to larger buildings.
This was not UDI. I don't think it was Casey Edge who's not. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So he made the comment in his letter. So I'm saying, I thought to myself, now, is this guy just exaggerating, or is this based on something? And they don't tell you, and yet, so you read it, and that seems to be a credible source, I think. Why would, I wouldn't sign a letter unless I had something to back that up with. So so that's where I'm troubled with this. Although I really like option 2, but option 1 seems to be the happy place for most people right now. And I'm just trying to measure this off with, our requirements for, trying to be affordable. And if Mr. Edge is right in his analysis, well, we just put this out of reach for that many more people. So I don't know.
I can say that one of the ways that we wanted to provide context to our council, and it is a difficult decision to make. It definitely, there's a lot of weight on your shoulders as far as that goes, was the study that we did with the example house that we see. And I actually found it very interesting. And this isn't, these aren't willy-nilly principles. These are actual metrics that are built into the body of the code, and then also programs that energy advisors use. So they clearly designed for us an energy model that showed no differences in construction assemblies if you were to simply move from a fossil fuel heating system to an electric one in the examples that we had. So as I say, it's definitely not a one size fits all. More complicated houses are going to be more expensive. But the vast majority of the houses we see, we feel that reflected it well in that study that was done, if that helps provide any clarity.
Yeah, I think this is a case of, in my view, right now, this is a case of that when that letter came in, he probably looked at the worst case scenario, in your analogy of the guys with the big windows and the big tall walls. And so let's run up the numbers. So he's not being inaccurate. He's actually said, this is how much it's gonna, but for those people that can afford those type of homes, yeah, I can understand that. But I tend to trust your analysis a little more. So anyways, I think I just came to my own conclusion on that. Talk about a full circle. Councillor Jordison.
I think this is one of those things where it's great to build better according to the climate crisis. It's just like eating healthier. It costs more, so not everybody can do it. Yeah, so I'm kind of at the same mind that Mr. Mayor was at the beginning, that I just don't want to outprice people in Colwood to be able to build houses. And that's my concern, just with going full throttle to the next step. I'm just conflicted, but thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Day.
So just to give you the history that I do know, Mr. Edge has been opposed to the step code from day one. We received letters when the step code was first rolled out by the province from Mr. Edge, representing the Greater Victoria Home Builders Association. When I attended the CRD's Sustainable Step Code tour with Mayor Hamilton, we talked specifically about that with developers. And so, if this plan that you already own and that you've already built God knows how many times is what you're going to build, and now you have to build it according to the step code, it may cost you more money. But if you're going to build a home that you can sell affordably, you may have to adjust your plan based on whether you have a low carbon energy system, or you decide that, well, maybe you can't afford the energy for the 9-foot ceilings, or, maybe you can't have that big, great open room and you need to have more walls and more things. Back to the small bungalows with the 4 kids in them being raised up in Ontario, you didn't get big houses because you couldn't afford big houses in those days, because if you had to heat your house in Ontario, you paid a whole lot more. So it isn't, because we adopt the STEP code does not mean that we can't build affordable homes anymore. We might not be able to build the affordable homes that you had in mind in light of the climate crisis. So there are builders who embrace the STEP code. There are those that don't. There are some implications for living in a climate emergency, including the way that you build your house. So I don't think that adopting the STEP code a year sooner or 2 years sooner than the province makes it mandatory will materially make it impossible to build affordable homes in Colwood.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ward, and I'm sorry, Councillor Grove, I'm going to cut you off because we got to keep moving on the agenda. Oops. You just push a button again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just looking at option 1 and option 2, and then I was comparing the table versus other municipalities. They all seem to be sort of where we are currently at option 3 or undecided, which I think is interesting that there's, you know, if we had more time, I'd want clarification on why do we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 municipalities in the CRD awaiting provincial direction. I'm not quite sure what that refers to. Have they deferred the decision, offloaded it to somebody else? I kind of wonder what the, you know, what the activity is there. But looking at the options, I guess my question is there some sort of hybrid model? Like it seems we've got 2 options. We go to step 4 already would be ahead of everybody in the CRD at this point. If we were to make that move, I'm talking about part 9, sorry. So with option 1, part 9, moving to residential step 4, you know, would move us ahead of everyone else, as would the next stage in the summer of 2024. You know, and then option 2, really the only difference in there that I can see is that initially part 9 moves right to step 5. And I just wonder why there's no graduated model where, for example, you go to, you know, residential step 4 in part 9 right away, summer of 2023, and then went to step 5 in summer of 2024. It seems that, you know, even in option 1, it says we go to step 4 and it sort of ends. There's no mention of when you go to step 5. So am I missing something there, or is there an opportunity for a hybrid approach that would allow, you know, BC Hydro to get their act together and, you know, a few of the other sort of moving pieces to come into play, let builders have time to adjust, that kind of thing?
If I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Essentially right now there's what's referred to, well, not referred to, it's called the Building Act. And so right now local governments are not able to set a technical requirement. So the big topic these days being low carbon in new buildings. So right now council could say that all buildings need to meet step 5 for part 9, all buildings need to meet step 4 for part 3. What this report more highlights is the low carbon energy system aspect of things. And so we feel it's quite likely that a builder would still opt for shooting for the step level that they are currently right now, just simply switching out their space heating and reducing carbon emissions. So the reason why certain municipalities in BC have taken this optional approach is because it is what you can do now if you would like to reduce carbon emissions. So other than that, you're limited to that. Say, for example, with the upcoming code change, and on that slide, you might recall the low carbon, the medium carbon, that timeline that the province has laid out. With an upcoming code change, council would be able to adopt one of those standards and say that all buildings need to be low carbon. And as I mentioned earlier, it seemed a little bit better received amongst the industry to have more choice though. So if they are used to building to a certain step already, they may opt for that. So this report more so hones in on what our local government could do with lowering carbon emissions specifically. And staff would recommend following the ever-changing industry for when the next steps would come, including zero carbon and including net zero, which is more the step levels. So as I mentioned in the presentation earlier, I'm glad they made two different charts, one with numbers for steps and then one with just words to try to decipher between the two. So hopefully that adds a bit of context.
Thank you very much. I'm going to cut the discussion unless anyone else wants to protest this. So the recommendation on the table is option 2. And I'm call the question. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Oh, was that unanimous? I didn't see yours, Mr. Ward. Okay, so it's unanimous. Thank you very much. Big, bold move maneuver by Colwood.
Your worship, if I may.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
The recommendation by Mr. Grant also included a first recycle as to when, and given you've chosen an option which includes low carbon, final recital, which was how much carbon per meter squared.
That was at 3 kilograms per square meter. That's right. Sorry. Does someone want to make the recommendation? Okay. So the first one, the 3 kilograms per square meter. Okay. Seconder. Okay. Councilor Grove. Any discussion? Yeah. Councilor Day.
I just want to note that UDI's, the Urban Development Institute letter, also mentioned some of the issues that we could potentially address with the province, which is the BC hydro costs, etc. So that might be an area to go along with this.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you very much. We good?
Your worship, sorry to be a bother. First part of the report had a recommendation for when. The recommendation is the summer of 23 with options for a later date or an earlier date.
Okay, so the options are summer 2023, which was recommended, or a specified date earlier than summer 2023, or a specified date later than summer 2023. Anybody like to make a motion? Okay, summer. Okay, David, Councilor Grove, Councilor Jordison. Got to get you a seconder on that. Any discussion on that? Nope. All the question. All those in favor? Perfect. Unanimous. We're going to move on here. Get to section 9 bylaws. And I understand, Yasmin, you're doing the presentation on this tonight. Okay, thank you very much. Over to you, Yasmin.
So Ms. Givens is away on holidays today, so I'm just presenting on her behalf. And nice to meet you, all the new council members that I hadn't had the opportunity to meet in person. So the omnibus amendments, there are basically, and if you go to your report, Ms. Givens has included a table that has the 4, I believe there's just 4, 6 changes that we're asking for, and they are minor additions to and corrections into our land use bylaw. So they are not providing a redefinition of comprehensive development zone. They are merely adding the comprehensive development zones that we have incorporated most recently. So it's basically a numbering and putting definitions in the right sequence of the number. Similarly, we had already gone through an omnibus amendment with the prior outgoing council. And with that amendment, there was some administrative errors in the way in which the amendments were put forward, so that we added the definition and in the next sentences we deleted it. And so basically that's why we're bringing in driving business back on to add it to the bylaw, because we kind of tripped ourselves over on the wording. It's basically just correcting errors throughout the bylaw. Potentially the one most newest addition to the amendment is going in the CD26 zone, going from 8.5 meters high to 2 stories. Effectively, 2 stories in a single family home is an 8.5 meter height. It's just in the context of the CD26 zone, that is a steeply sloping site. If we use height measured in meters versus measured in stories, it has some tricky challenges for us to calculate, but effectively it delivers the same house. It's a 2-story home. It's just the way in which our definition measures meter versus the stories. The stories is a bit more forgiving in terms of the technicality of how we measure it. And so it is just cleaning up the bylaw and allowing us to implement it in a more streamlined way at building permit. And I'm happy to answer any question.
Councillor Day.
Thank you. So my only concern with the omnibus amendments is that CD26 zone and the height of the building. And my reason for the concern is that the hillside development has caused lots of problems over the year with being able to define the height. So where we had previously thought that a 2-story home would be put into a location, we're finding that people are very inventive with their 2-story homes. That's 2 stories with a basement plus a rooftop deck. And the result between what's approved at our council table and what gets built in the community has been difficult, because we're basically seeing things that were not what we expected to see. So and we had thought that the way to get around that was by going to the specific height recommendation. So Triangle Mountain is one of the areas where that, big height differences on the lot has made a really big difference. And we're seeing a lot of 3- and 4-story homes develop in those areas. So is the 2-story definition that we're putting into our CD26 zone going to actually result in a 2-story home, or is it going to be a 2.5-story home with a weird roof and a roof deck?
In the context of this particular hillside development, it would mean that some of the lots that have a steep drop in elevation will have a walkout basement, but it will be below the road grade to the point that it doesn't impact the streetscape or other neighbors. It's just building into the slope that is existing on the site. Triangle Mountain is a unique case that has in and of itself a standalone definition for height. For however it happened to be, it has its own definition of height that allows it to have unusually taller buildings. But it's not the definition that we're using for the CD26 zone. It's more in the CD26 zone. In most zones, we apply the standard citywide definition. It's just I think the context of the CD26 zone, it was the first zone that we started to implement site adaptive. It was kind of rezoned in 2019, like early 2020. And we're finding it a little bit more flexibility into the calculation of height would allow us to work with the topography of the site better. In hindsight, having not fine tune the understanding at the rezoning stage. And so now once we are putting a building on the site, the 2 stories will give us a little bit more room to enable that walkout basement, which is working with the topography.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm gonna move the option 2 to get this moving along. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jordanson. Discussion? Any further discussion? So just a quick question on my side, Yasmin. So I was just trying to interpret what was said during the public portion participation. Mr. English was talking about 360 Latoria. Do you know exactly what he's talking about? Is it they promised a certain area for commercial and then they reneged on the size, or do you know exactly what he's talking about?
Yeah, I was trying to follow that up and kind of looking at the city zone that was created for that. And I might just have to get back with some more detailed information, I think. So the mixed use, and I think he was referencing the mixed use employment center and other comprehensive development zone. So a comprehensive development zone is a build to suit. So a proposal come forward and we fit it to suit that particular proposal and define the terms to enable that proposal. If sometimes council has stipulated a minimum amount of commercial space that they would like to see. That was the case of Royal Beach, for instance, where there's a minimum requirement of commercial space in a specific area within the zone. I do not have the CD 31 in front of me, which is the 360 Latoria 3554 Ryder Hesherall, as I believe is the new address. But a comprehensive development zone doesn't always have to have a commercial development in it. But I believe that in that particular corner of that neighborhood, we were looking for a commercial intent at the ground level, and it's delivered, albeit potentially less so than maybe some community members were expecting. I guess I don't know if the allocation of commercial space changed throughout the length of the proposal. I don't believe so, but I could be wrong, and I can provide more information to council via email.
Because that would be great.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we close that one off.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll call the question. Option 2 is what was recommended, that the amending bylaw be considered for first, second, and third reading, and that the public hearing be waived. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Day opposes. Okay, thank you very much. Going on to 9.2, sewer LAS enlargement bylaws, first, second, and third reading. Bylaw number 1959, Colwood Main Sewer LAS Enlargement, 3361 Patterson Way. Bylaw number 1960, Colwood West Sewer LAS Enlargement, 3361 Patterson Way. Bylaw number 1961, Colwood Main Sewer LAS Enlargement, 3128 Machosen Road. Bylaw numbers 1962, Colwood Central Sewer LAS Enlargement, 3128. Could I get a mover of the recommendation, please? Councillor Jensen, a seconder. Councillor Grove. Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Move forward. 9.3, bylaw number 1964, council remuneration bylaw. So as we said earlier, this bylaw was put into place because it was the easiest way to repeal the bylaw we had passed in the last council. So it's just to get back the old rates of 2018. So that's all this is. Can I get a mover, please? Okay, Councillor Day, seconder. Councillor Grove, discussion. Counselor Jensen?
Thank you. I had a quick read of this. Does this, and staff might have to weigh in, Mr. Chair, but yeah, does this include, I didn't see, did it speak to the natural lifts that came with the, thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call the question. Going to call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. And we're going to go to in camera. So I'll have to excuse everybody. Yeah.